Invincibility begins with contemplating the sun. Hey! Look who's back for more adventures. We love having you here to continue this story that keeps us all awake. Important note, all of this is pure fiction. So don't try any techniques you hear here in real life, your neighbor might call the cops. This amazing novel and all its rights belong to the original author. We're just the ones giving it voice and drama. Are you enjoying the show? Prove it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and leaving that like that motivates us so much. And if you want VIP access to exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting with things you won't find anywhere else. Chapter 426 officially closing down, 23. Regardless of whether the void is a calamity or a product of a calamity mixed with others, judging from its current state, the power of the void clearly possesses a strong sense of order and specific rules that can be exploited. This void shopkeeper has obviously exploited a loophole in these rules. Since a loophole exists, it's not just one person who can exploit it. After thinking for a while, he uttered these words. As he expected, the void responded. He pondered that the void was more like an anomaly than a calamity. After all, he had never encountered a calamity with whom he could communicate directly and rationally. How much do you want? Heng asked with a smile, still thinking. He had no shortage of ghost money. With his abundant source energy and the similarity between ghost money and life-buying money, he could print it anytime, anywhere. He could make counterfeit money so convincingly that the original owner wouldn't recognize it. The ultimate level of counterfeiting. He even considered whether he could use these counterfeit bills, through the trading scales he had previously obtained, to directly buy the void, essentially buying the issuing bank with counterfeit money. But when he sensed the price, he immediately abandoned the idea. The price of this Wujian was too high, seemingly endless. It was definitely not at the creation realm level, it was likely above. Even using the leverage of the trading scales and forcibly buying it with source power wouldn't work. He'd have to wait until later. I don't want your money, but you need to prove you have money. This duel must be fair. Wujian's voice rang out again. Heng nodded, he understood Wujian's meaning. As long as he could produce wealth commensurate with the Earth rank manager's status, and both sides wagered the same amount, his cultivation would return, and this life or death duel would become fair again. If he could produce wealth exceeding the Earth rank manager's status, it meant his life and fortune had become more important, and Wujian would be gambling with a small investment, needing to bear the consequences. However, there was one thing he doubted. Did Wujian really not need his money? Although, according to common sense, Wujian might be a bank that issues and prints money, theoretically not caring about the wealth of a small investor. That's the logic, and that's what they say. But reality is always different. The ghost money isn't just a piece of worthless paper, it's a general equivalent with some kind of credit guarantee, a special substance with some kind of mystical power, equivalent to the life-buying money he previously acquired. And this Wujian is more than just a simple bank. Therefore, Heng has reason to suspect that Wujian is trying to reel in a big fish. For example, if he inherits the identity of Wujian's manager, he'll rise to power in a certain sense, but he'll also be under Wujian's control. All his wealth, in a sense, belongs to Wujian, which is why Wujian says it doesn't care. Having figured this out, Heng smiled indifferently. He was quite curious about Wujian. Seemingly a calamity, yet also strange, clearly connected to various aspects of hell, yet also involved in monetary trade, worth investigating. Perhaps he could learn the truth about the changes in the path to heaven. Besides, whether Wujian can control him is another matter. The identity of the manager of the Earth level number 3 in is worth 10 billion ghost money. Wujian's voice rang out again, calmly stating the facts. Upon hearing these words, the shopkeeper Wujian opposite Heng felt a chill run down his spine, a sense of fear creeping into his heart. Could this guy really possibly produce so much ghost money? He clung to a sliver of hope. But he also knew that Wujian's presence here meant his wealth was far greater than it appeared. Sure enough, Heng quickly produced 10 billion ghost coins. Good, indeed 10 billion ghost coins. Your seal is broken. Wujian remained silent for a long time, as if a computer had crashed, before finally speaking, his tone subtly changing, seemingly also wondering where Heng got so much money. Heng sensed the dissipation of the power of rules that had imprisoned his cultivation and smiled slightly. This Wujian was truly interesting, printing counterfeit money right in front of the real person, and it actually worked? Was he unable to tell, or did he simply not care? He cracked his neck, his bones popping, feeling a sense of ease. He then smiled at the grim-faced Wujian shopkeeper opposite him. "What's wrong, shopkeeper? Why do you look so pale? Are you surprised I can produce so much money?" The Wujian shopkeeper's voice was low. He knew he had been outmaneuvered. He clearly didn't possess Wujian's aura, yet he had managed to attract Wujian's attention and produce so much ghost money. This was illogical. However, he wouldn't back down, so he could only stare intently at Li Heng and speak coldly. "I admit I've lost, but so what? Even if you recover your cultivation, do you think you can defeat me? In my previous life, I reached the middle stage of the Emperor's Path. Do you know what level of genius I was before?" The Wujian shopkeeper made no attempt to hide the fact that he was it. "Is that so? Then how did you die?" Li Heng smiled slightly. "You have no right to know that." "Die?" The innkeeper knew that the longer this strange and incomprehensible situation dragged on, the more variables would arise. He had no choice but to temporarily resort to drastic measures, even if it meant consuming his own true spiritual essence, to completely kill this person. Otherwise, they would be truly doomed. He immediately made his move, and a battlefield-like world appeared behind him, filled with yin energy, littered with white bones, and strewn with weapons, displaying the cultivation of an 8th-level heavenly tribulation cultivator, seemingly about to break through to the 9th level. In this battlefield-like world, yin energy condensed into yin spirits, bearing their fangs and claws, white bones rising up, picking up weapons, forming endless seas of skeletons, extremely intimidating. Li Heng was somewhat surprised. So it was still an 8th-level heavenly tribulation cultivator? If this person had neither progressed nor regressed after death, wouldn't it mean that only an 8th-level heavenly tribulation cultivator could reach the middle stage of the Emperor's Path? Thinking about it this way, the Emperor's Path competition seemed quite valuable. If this was the case, wouldn't the final Emperor's Path require the 9th level? Or even above the 9th level? However, thinking about it this way, the little golden dragon lost its value. That guy was a special envoy of the heavenly court. Of course, it's possible that the guy had been dead for a long time, his dragon corpse had rotted, and his cultivation had dissipated. He might have had much more cultivation in life than he did, or perhaps he was a second-generation heir, born to stand at the finish line. Since he's already at the finish line, what does it matter if he's a little useless? Sigh, 8 tribulations heaven and earth, that's strong. I can't beat him, I'm too weak. Oh well, weak as I am. Li Heng sighed in disappointment. Then he spoke. "Wujian, don't go yet, I still have money." Instantly, Wujian descended again, and the arena, which had resumed its flow, froze again. It was fortunate that this arena wasn't sentient, otherwise, being frozen again and again, without any sense of exhilaration in battle, would probably make anyone want to curse. All of Wujian's attacks were also suppressed once more. He looked astonished and incredibly frustrated. What happened? Does this person still have money? You still have money? Wujian, unusually emotional, asked in astonishment. Of course I do. Li Heng's mind stirred, and another stack of ghost money appeared in his hand. Wujian fell silent. Did he really issue and print this much ghost money himself? Your wealth far exceeds the value of your status as the earthly rank manager. It has been determined that the original earthly rank manager has gambled with a small investment for a large return, and must bear the consequences. Part of his cultivation will be suppressed, causing him to fall into the 7th tribulation heaven and earth. Wujian pronounced the verdict. The Wujian shopkeeper's cultivation level also shifted accordingly, dropping directly from the peak of the 8th tribulation heaven and earth to the 7th tribulation heaven and earth. His aura weakened by more than half, and the yin spirits and the sea of skeletons were reduced by more than half. The Wujian shopkeeper sensed the suppression within his body and was dumbfounded. However, he still harbored a glimmer of hope. Because his foundation was still strong, as long as this person's wealth did not exceed his by too much, his cultivation level would not be suppressed too much, and he would still be able to fight. Even if part of my strength is sealed and I am burdened with that, I will still be invincible in the world. He roared in his heart. Then, Li Heng took out another stack of underworld money. Wujian's words rang out again, and the old shopkeeper's strength was suppressed again, dropping from the 7th tribulation heaven and earth to the 6th tribulation heaven and earth. This time, he was completely dumbfounded. Shopkeeper, don't blame me, after all, I am too weak. Li Heng smiled slightly. Upon hearing this, the shopkeeper of Wujian was so angry he almost vomited blood. What utter nonsense. Too weak? Do you really think I can't sense your aura? You damned bastard, you're at least a 6th or 7th tribulation cultivator. Now he was desperate, staring intently at Li Heng. If you're so capable, keep adding money. I refuse to believe you can suppress me into mortal. Let me tell you honestly, if you can't suppress me into mortal, I won't let you off easy even if I'm gone. He directly threatened. This was truly humiliating. He thought he had calculated everything, but this man had unreasonably produced so much money, repeatedly thwarting his schemes and even causing him to fall to the state. This kind of guy truly deserved to die. He was filled with resentment. If it were the old Emperor Lu, he would have killed every rich fool he saw. This is what you requested. I didn't force you. Li Heng's answer exceeded the expectations of the Wujian innkeeper. A bad premonition immediately rose in the innkeeper's heart. Could this guy really produce the money that had reduced him to immortal? That amount of money was enough to buy several Wujian inns. Was this guy really not in charge of printing ghost money? The answer was that he was right. Li Heng was indeed printing ghost money. Counterfeit money was still money. So, stack after stack of ghost money appeared in Li Heng's hands, while the innkeeper's cultivation level plummeted rapidly, from the creation realm to the void Dao realm, then to the void heaven realm. Even freefall couldn't have happened that fast. Soon, the ghost money on Li Heng's side was piled up like a mountain, and the innkeeper's cultivation level had fallen below the innate realm, completely reduced to a mere ghost. He still clung to a sliver of hope. However, Li Heng easily produced another stack of ghost money. Instantly, he despaired. No. You can't. He roared. However, the voice of Wu Jian rang out again, beginning the verdict. The wealth has completely exceeded that of the original shopkeeper, and the shopkeeper's cultivation level is judged to have dropped another level. Instantly, shopkeeper Wu Jian fell to the level of immortal. The next moment, shopkeeper Wu Jian completely dissipated, turning into nothingness. Li Heng remained calm, not surprised. After all, shopkeeper Wu Jian was originally a dead man, merely clinging to life by relying on his cultivation level and the external environment. But now that his cultivation level was gone, he could only die completely. And his wildly surging source power also revealed this fact. Incidentally, he also gained 2 extra golden source points. The total number of golden source points had reached as many as 49. Ironically, the source power that shopkeeper Wu Jian gained from his death was far more than the source power he consumed to print ghost money, so he actually made a profit in this respect. Li Heng sensed the omnipresent Wu Jian and sighed. Indeed, it's good to have no middleman taking a cut. You surprised me. Wu Jian spoke again. What are you surprised about? Li Heng replied with a smile. These ghost money weren't printed by me, but they're real. However, I won't pursue it further. Now you're the manager of that earth inn, Wu Jian. From now on, you must manage it well, and you'll have to offer 50% of the profits as tribute every month. Wu Jian indicated his magnanimity. What if I don't do that? Li Heng countered, dancing on the edge of the rooftop. You can do that, but you'll have to bear the consequences, outsider. After warning Li Heng, Wu Jian disappeared without another word. Simultaneously, as Wu Jian's power dissipated, the temporary arena slowly vanished, and Li Heng returned to the Wu Jian Inn. The difference was that he was now the innkeeper. Furthermore, he had a clearer understanding of the inn's capabilities and the limitations and benefits of being its innkeeper. The limitations were the usual: loyalty to the Wu Jian path, not leaving the inn at will, and mandatory offerings to Wu Jian, among other things. The benefits included discounts on food and a share of the inn's revenue from ghost money. How to put it? For ordinary beings, especially the various dead from the Wu Jian path, the benefits outweighed the limitations. But for Li Heng, the benefits were utterly meaningless. Discounts on food? A joke. He never even considered paying. A share of the ghost money revenue? A joke. He could print his own ghost money. Even the bank praised his counterfeiting skills. Thus, this identity was reduced to mere limitations. Moreover, he wasn't on this road to become a manager. He intended to travel along it to the central great world, the heavenly court. Why would he possibly stop? If it weren't for the managerial position being forced upon him by Wu Jian, he wouldn't have accepted it. Unless he used his source energy, he couldn't refuse on his own. But this position wasn't entirely useless. The food produced by Wu Jian provided him with source energy boosts, allowing him to exploit the inn. However, he would eventually have to leave. Therefore, he needed a way to exploit the inn anytime, anywhere. After thinking for a moment, Li Heng suddenly had an idea. At this moment, everyone in the inn, from the innkeeper to the guests and the little golden dragon, was completely bewildered. They didn't know what had happened. How could the manager, Wu Jian, have suddenly disappeared? Was it haunted? No, they were the ghosts. Then they heard Li Heng smile and say, "I hereby declare the Wu Jian Inn officially closed." Chapter 427 The Third Path, 33. Officially closing down? Everyone was stunned again. What was going on? Li Heng continued, "As you can see, the previous manager of Wu Jian Inn is gone, so I've become the manager of this inn. Therefore, Wu Jian Inn is closing down." "What do you mean by closing down?" A waiter stepped forward tremblingly and asked. Although he didn't understand what was going on, as a staff member of Wu Jian Inn, he could sense that the great man before him was indeed the manager. "Of course, it means this inn is no longer open for business and is closing down," Li Heng said happily. Everyone was dumbfounded. Closing down and he's so happy? This Wu Jian Inn is a money-devouring monster. Someone actually chose to close it down? Does he have too much money? The waiter felt a bad premonition upon hearing this. "You said closing down? What about me?" He pointed to himself and asked in astonishment. "Well, considering you're just a laborer, go back to where you came from," Li Heng said calmly, glancing at the waiter. He had no interest in running this so-called inn, he only intended to fleece them. "All right, don't disturb the peace." With a wave of his hand, the guests and the waiter vanished from the inn, appearing at the foot of the lonely mountain, completely bewildered. The little golden dragon finally came to its senses and quickly approached Li Heng. "Your Excellency, what happened? How did you become the manager?" "Being a manager in this god-forsaken place is unacceptable," it said, wagging its tail with great concern. "It's your business, my pet. Besides, are you worried about me? Are you worried about not having those delicious energy crystals anymore?" Li Heng glanced at the little golden dragon, seeing right through it. The little golden dragon smiled awkwardly. How could he be blamed? Those energy crystals were delicious, and they could even replenish his missing true spirit. His true spirit had already solidified considerably. If he continued to eat, he might actually be able to be reborn and return to life. Li Heng ignored the little golden dragon and surveyed the inn's surroundings. The original Wu Jian Inn had been run by a stingy innkeeper, and the food, which relied on the power of the Wu Jian monster rather than being prepared by a chef, only employed one waiter. Now that the waiter was gone, he could do as he pleased. For example, he could buy the Wu Jian Inn. He possessed source power and the trading scales, a manifestation of the concept of trade, theoretically allowing him to trade and buy anything. However, the Wu Jian monster's true form was too powerful, and the purchase price was too exorbitant for him. But a mere Wu Jian Inn was different. Summoning the trading scales, he began to weigh the price of the Wu Jian Inn in the conceptual realm, discovering that he couldn't afford to buy it outright. Even if he did, it would still bankrupt him. Li Heng was somewhat surprised. It shouldn't be like this for just an inn. However, after sensing it more closely, he suddenly understood. It turns out that the Wu Jian Inn wasn't an independent entity. A large part of its essence was strongly connected to the Wu Jian entity itself. To completely purchase the Wu Jian Inn was equivalent to purchasing a large portion of the Wu Jian entity. This is why he couldn't afford it and went bankrupt. If he had changed his mind, he wouldn't have needed to buy it completely. Buying it completely would have had disadvantages. For example, the Wu Jian entity would definitely notice and, in its rage, try to kill him. Moreover, even after a complete purchase, maintaining the Wu Jian Inn would still require his efforts. He bought the Wu Jian Inn to continuously profit from it. He couldn't afford to lose money for this sheep. Therefore, it was better to buy only a portion, like investing in a company. If we compare the Wu Jian Inn and the Wu Jian entity to companies, then the Wu Jian Inn is the subsidiary, and the Wu Jian entity is the parent company. All the funds for the Wu Jian Inn subsidiary come from the support of the Wu Jian entity parent company. The Wu Jian entity is also responsible for the profits and losses of the Wu Jian Inn. But if Li Heng were to invest in the Wu Jian Inn subsidiary, purchasing a portion of its ownership, he would become a shareholder of this subsidiary. In this way, the profits and losses of the Wu Jian Inn would be shared by both Li Heng and the Wu Jian main body. Moreover, Li Heng only wanted to profit and share the money. After all, he didn't want to be responsible for the inn's losses, nor did he want the Wu Jian main body to discover that he had secretly purchased ownership of the inn, transforming himself from an employee into a shareholder. Therefore, He could use his position as innkeeper to conduct deeper operations, continuously profiting from the inn, while the resulting losses would still be borne by the Wujian main body. Li Heng's eyes lit up. This idea was brilliant. Although it was a pipe dream for an ordinary being to conceal such actions from the Wujian main body, it wasn't impossible for him, a cheat-like individual. He could simply use his source power. Sure enough, he sensed that purchasing only half ownership of the Wujian inn, without involving the Wujian main body, greatly reduced the source power required. Even if he needed to add more source power to conceal this, it was still within his capacity, and he hadn't even used any gold source power. Without further hesitation, the thought formed in his mind, and half of his source energy dwindled, transforming into bargaining chips. He placed them on the scales of the transaction, instantly tilting the Wujian inn on the other side, balancing the two sides. In an instant, the purchase was complete. Li Heng sensed that he now owned half of the inn. He smiled slightly. No matter how hard a laborer works, he's still just a laborer. But with shares in ownership, it's different. He's a capitalist. The best part is, he doesn't have to bear any losses. Of course, he estimated that this couldn't be kept secret from Wujian forever. But he didn't intend to keep it a secret forever. Once he was tired of exploiting Wujian and couldn't exploit him anymore, even if the true form of Wujian knew about it, it wouldn't matter. And by then, it was uncertain whether the true form of Wujian would dare to cause him trouble. Here, have a piece of energy crystal to chew on. Li Heng reached out and used the inn's mystical properties to create a multicolored black crystal, tossing it to the little golden dragon. He then got himself a piece of chocolate and popped it into his mouth. The little golden dragon was overjoyed and hurriedly caught the food, afraid of dropping it, and took a delicious bite. As the innkeeper, to produce food, one had to apply to higher authorities and use one's own wealth as collateral. This was perhaps why the waiter and the innkeeper, seeing them eat so much food, were alarmed and wanted them to pay up front. But as a shareholder, one of the owners, no application was needed, they could use the food directly. As for the cost of producing this food, we should thank the great, selfless entity of Wujian. Alright, let's go, let's continue on our way. Li Heng and the little golden dragon walked out of the Wujian inn. The Wujian inn quickly shrank, becoming a toy-like model, which swayed in the wind and was clipped to Li Heng's waist. This was also why Li Heng had just announced its closure. The Wujian inn was no longer serving others, but serving him, the shareholder. Using a company vehicle for personal purposes, don't you understand? They continued leisurely along the path ahead. Meanwhile, above mountains of knives and seas of fire, a mental force surveyed the scene. The thought abruptly stopped, lost in deep thought. What's going on? Why does it feel like someone's plotting against me? But I haven't found anything. Why is this happening? The thought was confused. A short while later, the waiter appeared on the lonely mountain where the Wujian inn had originally been located. He was panting and sweating profusely, finally managing to climb up. However, when he saw that the Wujian inn was gone, he was dumbfounded. Greek letter delta, what happened? Where did such a big inn go? The waiter, or rather, Xiao panicked. He had been suddenly thrown to the foot of the mountain by Li Heng, and before he knew it, he was overjoyed, as it meant he had regained his freedom and didn't need to stay at the inn as a waiter anymore. But after a long while, he came to his senses and realized that he seemed to know nothing but being a waiter, and the Wujian path was so dangerous, he might be gone any day. It would be better to go back to being a waiter and going to jail. So, having finally realized his true colors, Xiao struggled to climb back up the lonely mountain, intending to beg the new innkeeper to let him stay. But now, the inn had vanished. Xiao was completely bewildered, not knowing what to do. What should he do? Just then, laughter echoed from the sky. Xiao, we've arrived. The Wujian inn. Ah, I'm so excited. I want to see just how extraordinary this Wujian inn, which claims to be able to make all the delicacies in the world, really is. If it's not delicious, I'll smash it up. Xiao, don't be reckless. The Wujian inn is backed by Wujian. If you continue to eat so recklessly, be careful you don't get a beating from father when you get back. With the sounds of conversation, two figures floated down from the sky. Xiao, still bewildered, looked closely. They were two beautiful young women, exuding an air of nobility. The two women arrived on the lonely mountain, looking at the flat expanse without a trace of the inn, and were also puzzled. Third sister, did you lead us the wrong way? The slightly younger woman asked the older woman beside her, puzzled. This shouldn't be the case, it should be right here. The third sister replied, bewildered. There's a little devil over there, I'll go ask him. The woman called little fourth, seeing that her own sister didn't know either, and noticing little nine standing there in a daze, her eyes lit up and she ran over. Until she saw little nine's face, she was immediately shocked and shouted, Little nine. Little nine? The situation was just getting out of hand when another problem arose. Before they could figure out what was going on, a terrifying figure tore through the void and appeared on the lonely mountain, constantly scanning everything below. Finally, he spoke in a cold voice, Old demon Cheyenne, get out here right now. Don't think that just because you're the manager of the Wujian Inn here, I can't find you. Quickly hand over my brother's remains and weapons, and I'll spare your death. His aura exploded, and a vast world appeared behind him. Judging from its imposing presence, it was at the ninth tribulation heaven and earth level, faintly exuding an eternal aura. Even with the constant appearance of calamities in the void, heavenly thunder and earthly fire could not shake this world in the slightest. At this moment, the instigator, Heng, had already gone far away. The little golden dragon stared longingly at Heng. It had finished eating the multicolored black crystal. Heng casually condensed another crystal and threw it to the little golden dragon, like feeding a dog. Anyway, this dragon was constrained in its current state and didn't eat much, which was just a drop in the ocean for the entire Wujian Inn. But since it had taken the benefits from him, Heng, it had to do its job. Raising an army for 1,000 days, using it for 1 day. We've reached a fork in the road. Go and scout ahead and see what's ahead of both roads. Heng sat lazily under the shade of a large tree, pointing to the 2 forks in the road ahead. A breeze blew by, making him feel relaxed. The premise was to ignore the lonely graves on both sides of the road and to have a strong physique that could stir up the yin wind. Your Excellency, can we not go? The little golden dragon looked at the 2 paths with a hint of dread. One path plunged into shadow, its end seemingly endless darkness, while the other was filled with light, seemingly leading to a world of light. But even a dragon with a snake's brain could see that both paths were definitely dangerous. The path plunging into shadow was one thing, but the one filled with light? What a joke. With such a bizarre environment, a path filled with light was just a trap. You can choose not to go, Heng said lazily, his meaning clear. Walking on this path, he found that his divine sense was useless, but he didn't want to waste his source energy unnecessarily, so he could only resort to this very primitive method. Okay, I guarantee I'll complete the mission. The little golden dragon immediately surrendered, completely obedient. Adhering to the principle that illusion is reality, and reality is loss, and the most dangerous place is the safest place, he chose the path plunging into shadow, leading to darkness. Then, very quickly, he fled back in a panic. Your Excellency, ahead lies an endless abyss. Heng remained lying down, offering no reply. The little golden dragon could only obediently run to another path, a path filled with light, before frantically fleeing back. Reporting, Your Excellency, this path leads to nothingness. What should we do now? The little golden dragon swallowed hard, utterly bewildered. Both paths were clearly impassable. What to do now? Then take the third path. Heng stood up and answered softly. The third path? Oh, I understand. Your Excellency is truly wise. The little golden dragon's eyes lit up. The path of no return, the so-called interval or boundary, resides within the heart. Therefore, to leave this place and continue forward, one must detach oneself from the heart. He couldn't help but sigh in admiration, completely convinced. It seemed His Excellency had already discovered the location of the third path. Great wisdom indeed. This path is not in reality, but in the heart. Indeed, his cultivation level was too low. Then, he saw Heng throw a punch. Everything ahead was shattered, the path of darkness and the path of light were both reduced to nothingness, swept away, leaving only a flat, broad road. The dragon was completely dumbfounded. Heng withdrew his fist, turned around, looked at the little golden dragon, and asked, What do you understand? Chapter 428 The Dead Return to Life, 13. The little golden dragon fell silent. What could he say? But under Heng's gaze, he could only force himself to speak. Your Excellency truly possesses great supernatural powers. More flattery. Let's go. Heng ignored the dragon and continued walking forward. The little golden dragon quickly followed. As they walked, Heng casually asked, Are we on the right track? Are we gradually approaching the central great world, the heavenly court? The little golden dragon pondered for a moment, then nodded and said, Your Excellency, you should know that I was born in the central great world, the heavenly court. So even though I died and only my true spirit remains, I still have a faint connection with the heavenly court. I can indeed sense that as we walk in this direction, we are getting closer and closer to the central great world. However, this road has changed so much now, it's even been renamed the path of no return. I don't know if what lies ahead is a dead end. Little golden dragon shook his head and sighed. However, he wasn't flustered. After all, in his eyes, Li Heng's strength was terrifying. He could create a path even when there was none, which was unbelievable. Perhaps even a dead end could be punched through by Li Heng. As long as we can gradually get closer, that's fine, Li Heng said calmly. Whether there was a path or not was unimportant to him. With his ability, he could create one even if there wasn't one. The so-called end of a road was simply non-existent for him. Soon, a city appeared in front of them. This city was vast, like an ancient city that stretched across the heavens and earth, separating the heavens and the abyss. Even from a distance, one could feel its magnificent and awe-inspiring aura. Little Golden Dragon's expression was a little strange. He hadn't expected such a scene. The dirt road was lined with lonely graves, yet it led directly to this magnificent ancient city. It wasn't like crossing a small river in front of your house to reach the other side. Let's go, there might be something interesting inside. Li Heng didn't stop at the ancient city, instead, he continued forward. He could sense that many people existed in the city, the dead, of course. Soon, the two arrived at the city gate. Two armored guards stood there. Upon seeing them, their expressions changed, and they quickly drew their weapons, crossing them to block their path. Who goes there? The two guards shouted angrily. Entering the city, Li Heng said calmly. Entering the city? The two guards' expressions became strange. You, a living person, entering a city of the dead? Are you tired of living? One guard said disdainfully. Li Heng raised an eyebrow and spoke. So, you're saying there's a distinction between the living and the dead here? He was somewhat surprised. He had assumed this road to the underworld was entirely populated by the dead, given the eerie situation, the numerous lonely graves along the roadside, and the vast expanse of bones beneath the ground. Nonsense, of course we can tell. Don't you even know this basic common sense? Where did you come from? Those who can reach the path of no return are all geniuses, whether they are born or die. Another guard rolled his eyes, utterly speechless. Then how do living people survive in this environment? The little golden dragon beside him asked curiously. Li Heng also began to ponder. You see, since entering the true realm, he hadn't encountered a single truly living person. Not even the great Zhou Empress Wu Wuxiang, whose condition seemed somewhat strange. He had thought everyone in the true realm was dead. What kind of living person isn't alive? The guard retorted directly. Another guard spoke up quietly. We're just guarding the city gate, we don't need to answer your question, but if you want to enter the city of the dead to die, I won't stop you, as long as you pay the toll. Living people entering the land of the dead need to pay 100,000 netherworld coins, otherwise they'll go back to where they came from. Another guard chimed in. Yeah, can't you, a living person, just live a good life? Why go looking for death? After death, you can't escape the jurisdiction of the path of no return. Like the two of us, once proud prodigies of the Imperial Road, capable of conquering the Xianun ancient city in the middle of the Imperial Road. But now we're dead, relegated to being insignificant guards here. All our supernatural powers and spells from our lives are useless, greatly weakened. It's hateful. The two lamented their past, then urged Li Heng to return quickly, showing rare kindness. So what dangers are there for the living entering the city of the dead? Li Heng asked with a smile. There are many risks. For example, if the dead want to return to life, they must seize the life force of the living. And on the path of no return, all the dead want to return to life and escape the control of no return. You, a living person, are just a tempting target in the eyes of the dead. The guard sneered. Is that so? Interesting. Li Heng laughed. Then why don't you two attack His Excellency? The little golden dragon suddenly spoke up, looking at the two guards with confusion. Unexpectedly, the two guards gave the little golden dragon a disdainful look, then spoke. Then why don't you, little dragon, attack him? Of course it's because we can't win. Do you think we're fools? They said with complete self-righteousness. The little golden dragon was stunned. How much is your daily wage anyway? Is it worth risking your life? If it weren't for the watchful eyes of their superiors and the punishment for desertion, they wouldn't even bother stopping Li Heng from entering the city. Well, you two have worked hard guarding the city. Have you ever thought about returning to life? Li Heng said with a smile. No. The two guards answered succinctly. Then why? The little golden dragon asked in surprise. We're both dead, which means we're losers. Even if we were reborn, we'd be killed sooner or later in the Imperial Road contest. Why suffer a second death? The two guards were self-righteous and utterly nonchalant. Wait, you said return to the Imperial Road contest? The path to heaven, the Imperial Road, still exists? The little golden dragon asked in surprise. The two guards looked strange and countered, why doesn't it exist? The path of no return and the path of the Emperor are two sides of the same coin. The path of no return is the domain of the post-mortem prodigies, while the path of the Emperor is the domain of the living prodigies. How could you not know this? Isn't this common sense? Wait, are you newcomers to the path of the Emperor? But that shouldn't be the case. How could newcomers end up on the path of no return? Is there a problem with this special node you used to enter the path of the Emperor? I advise you to notify your race to repair the special node, otherwise, living people coming to the path of no return are just courting death. The two kindly advised. The little golden dragon looked at Li Heng with a strange expression. Li Heng shrugged. Is it my fault? How was he supposed to know that special node was so fragile? Then how can we get back to the path of the Emperor? Little golden dragon asked. Even though he was a dead dragon, he didn't want to stay in such a dark environment and would rather return to the realm of the living. However, he was a little confused. The path to heaven had a duality, a path of no return? Did that venerable one have such a thing when he built the path to heaven? We're just dead, how would we know this? The two guards rolled their eyes. Then I understand, here are 100,000 ghost coins. Should we go into the city? Li Heng smiled slightly, waved his hand, and stacks upon stacks of 100,000 ghost coins appeared on the ground, leaving the two guards dumbfounded. It really was 100,000 ghost coins. You, where did you get so much money? One of the guards gasped and asked in shock. Why are you two talking so much? Let us into the city. Li Heng remained silent. The little golden dragon faithfully played the role of a lackey, hands on its hips, looking down at the two guards with an arrogant air. The two guards exchanged a glance, somewhat embarrassed. The reason they quoted 100,000 ghost coins was to persuade this living person to go back and not come to the city to die. They didn't expect this living person to actually have so much money. Now they were doomed. Sigh, you don't need that much money to enter the city, 100 is enough. The other guard shook his head. You actually dared to cheat us. The little golden dragon was immediately furious. How dare they cheat him, the great envoy of the heavenly court? How is this cheating? It's to prevent you from dying. The guard who had been shocked said helplessly. It's all right, let's go into the city. You two take the 100,000 ghost coins. I will come to find you two in a while. I hope you two won't disappoint me. Li Heng patted the two guards on the shoulders, speaking earnestly. Then, he led the enraged little golden dragon into the city. After a long while, the two guards, staring at the money on the ground, finally came to their senses. The guard on the left spoke softly. Old Fa, did you notice when that person went in? The guard on the right, also named Old Fa, shook his head with a complicated expression. Old Gu, did you notice that they also know another name for the Imperial Road, the Road to Heaven? Hasn't that name been buried for a long time? The two guards finally fell silent. The 100,000 coins on the ground were a bit too hot to handle. The two entered the city. Some of the sights were strange and bizarre, like the lumps of rotting meat in the butcher shops. But some things were perfectly normal, like stalls selling plants, tree roots, and even metal. Li Heng thought about it and didn't find it strange. The path of no return wasn't just for humans. For example, if the plant race encountered other races selling plants and tree roots, the feeling would be no different from humans seeing other races selling human corpses. Your Excellency, why are they all staring at us so intently? The little golden dragon sensed the green gazes of the dead all focused on them, and a sense of unease and fear rose within him. He whispered, "You've forgotten what we just said. Go back and copy it down." Li Heng said with a smile. He could sense those burning gazes, as if they wanted to skin him alive and devour him, which was exactly what he wanted to see. It was entrapment. He was worried about not having enough source energy. However, even though he, a living person, was a tempting target in the eyes of the dead, and these dead were staring intently at him, he had walked for a long time without them attacking him. There seemed to be some kind of order in the city regulating this behavior. Li Heng looked up at the sky, lost in thought. An unbroken order? But as the saying goes, order is meant to be broken. As long as the temptation was great enough, he wasn't afraid these dead wouldn't attack him, just like a capitalist encountering a 300% profit. So, he immediately unleashed the life force within him. A storm of life force spread throughout the city. This behavior had a very apt description: dancing and twirling in the center of the zombie horde. Instantly, the dead throughout the entire city went crazy. Boom! A tremor resounded around them, the ground shook, as if some colossal creature was approaching Li Heng. Soon, an enormous, blood-red, muscular, barely recognizable humanoid corpse appeared before Li Heng. Because of this blood-red corpse's appearance, most of the surrounding corpses began to retreat in fear. In a sense, this menacing blood-red corpse actually helped Li Heng out of his predicament. The blood-red corpse spoke. "Living person, you're courting death. Such abundant life force. I was just worried that the Wujianin had closed down and disappeared, leaving me with no hope of returning to life and reclaiming my place on the Emperor's Road, but unexpectedly, a living person of your caliber appeared. Eating you will allow my life force to return me to life. Indeed, heaven is helping me. Even Wujian can't stop me." He pounded his chest with both hands and laughed heartily. Chapter 429 A Mirror of Three Lives, 23. Li Heng sighed, observing the arrogant demeanor of the blood-red corpse. Sometimes, lowly minions simply lack the self-awareness of lowly minions. He extended a finger, lightly touching it. The void before him rippled like water, instantly touching the blood-red corpse and causing its body to explode, dissipating into dust. Instantly, the surrounding corpses trembled with fear. What happened? What just occurred? Their scalps tingled, their bodies shaking. That guy, a tyrant in the city, who acted with impunity and ruthlessness, was completely obliterated and perished with a mere touch? What kind of monster was this living person? Without a second thought, they instinctively fled. The next moment, the Earth Dharma image descended behind Li Heng, its boundless divine power manifesting in the world, suppressing the surroundings. The surrounding corpses immediately froze in place, unable to move, like statues. Since they had already harbored greedy thoughts towards him, wanting to seize his life, then they wouldn't be leaving. Li Heng sighed softly, raised his left hand, and shook it. The power of the Earth's Dharma form surged inward, attempting to crush the dead, scatter their souls, and harvest their source energy. "Wait, assistant." Suddenly, a furious shout rang out. The ironclad rules suspended above the city moved in response, transforming into chains of divine law, weaving a net that tore through the void and covered Li Heng's location. Li Heng flicked his finger slightly. A cracking sound rang out. These chains of divine law, this net of rules, shattered instantly, as fragile as glass, easily broken, then dissipating into countless crystals that scattered without any divine power. The dead were also harvested by Li Heng, reduced to nothingness. A sensation of source energy arriving appeared in his mind. The source energy increase wasn't significant. This wasn't surprising, as the cultivation levels of these dead were generally weak. However, he unexpectedly condensed a golden source point. Li Heng now possessed over 50 golden source points, one step closer to the 100th, a milestone in his life. Li Heng smiled slightly. Entering this city was truly the right decision. "How dare you? Who are you to make a move in the city?" The man who had spoken earlier arrived. He was a middle-aged man, rather short, with a large belly, dressed in luxurious robes, yet exuding an air of authority. Li Heng looked at the dead man before him with disdain. "So what if I made a move?" The middle-aged man was taken aback, seemingly not expecting Li Heng to be so arrogant even after seeing him. For a moment, he didn't know how to answer and began to ponder. He started thinking about many things. For example, he frantically considered Li Heng's origins. He wondered, with such arrogance and strength, could this living person have a powerful background, perhaps from some ancient divine dynasty on the Emperor's Road? The more he thought, the less decisive he became. Now, he felt a deep sense of apprehension towards Li Heng and dared not make a move rashly. "Where exactly do you come from?" "This is the path of no return, the city of no return, the territory under the jurisdiction of no return." Even if you come from an ancient divine dynasty on the Emperor's Road, you cannot act recklessly here. The middle-aged man said coldly. But his tone had clearly changed. They began to investigate Li Heng's origins. Does it matter where I come from? What matters is who you are. If you don't have a reason, don't stand in my way, Li Heng said calmly, standing with his hands behind his back. Who am I? I am the city lord of this city. The city lord of Wujian laughed in anger. Where did this hothead come from? Since you are the city lord, you should discipline the people in your city. The moment I entered the city, they were eyeing me like hawks, eager to devour my life force. If it weren't for my superior skills, I would be dead by now. You failed to discipline them properly. What is your punishment? Li Heng retorted, questioning and taking the initiative. The little golden dragon, hearing Li Heng's words, exclaimed inwardly, as expected of the venerable one, even his words are so imposing, directly overwhelming the city lord of Wujian. Wait? You've been wreaking havoc in the city, and I haven't pursued you, yet you're pursuing me first? The city lord of Wujian reacted, laughing angrily. This kid really didn't take him seriously. You have no right to pursue this, Li Heng said calmly. The dead men who had just arrived were utterly horrified by Li Heng's words, gasping in shock. This living person actually dared to speak such words to the city lord. Was he not afraid of death? They had rushed over after hearing the commotion, only to find that the commotion was caused by a living person. They felt sorry for him. This living person had offended the city lord and was probably doomed. How much better it would have been if he had fallen into their hands. The life force within this living person was incredibly strong, enough to revive him. At this moment, they hadn't even noticed why the dead men who were originally here were gone. What an arrogant brat. The city lord of Wujian was furious, but he calmed down. I don't care if you have an ancient divine dynasty behind you or anything else, as long as you stay on the Wujian road, stay in Wujian city, then tigers will lie down for you, dragons will coil up for you. And if I don't do this? Li Heng smiled. The city lord of Wujian narrowed his eyes, sensing something was amiss. This kid in front of him was too arrogant to the point of being courting death. This couldn't be explained by having a powerful backer. Unless this kid possessed some kind of hidden strength, like being able to escape from him or defeat him. But defeating him was impossible. In this city of no return, he was a god, invincible. Unless the city lord himself was involved, no one could defeat him. So this kid's trump card was definitely escaping to save his life. You think your trump card is very strong? The city lord of no return smiled confidently. Li Heng immediately realized that the city lord of no return had misunderstood something. However, he didn't bother to explain. Besides, he hadn't come to the city to be a peacemaker and tell everyone to get along peacefully. So what if I am? So what if I'm not? According to you, if I were to go on a killing spree in the city, you should make a move now, but you're still talking nonsense to me. It's clear you don't dare to make a move. Li Heng said with a smile. More and more dead people gathered around, and when they heard Li Heng's words, they were dumbfounded. This stranger is truly arrogant, daring to directly mock the city lord. This can't be explained away as courting death. After all, even in death, he'd be under the jurisdiction of the boundless city lord, suffering endless torment. The mirror of three lives, come. The boundless city lord spoke confidently, neither angry nor annoyed. The ironclad rules above the city responded once more, evolving along some mysterious trajectory, ultimately forming a mirror that floated into his hand. The mirror of three lives can reflect three lives. You think your trump card is very secretive, but in reality, it holds no secrets for me, the boundless city lord said indifferently. He wasn't in a hurry to act. Li Heng's calm and arrogant attitude made him very suspicious, feeling that there must be some powerful force or trump card behind him. Therefore, he decided to test the waters first to avoid irreversible consequences after a real attack. After all, he was only the boundless city lord, not the boundless city lord himself. This was true wisdom, the wisdom that made him the city lord. If it were any other hothead, he would have already died a second time. Li Heng looked curiously at the mirror of three lives. He had heard Zhuan Yang mention in the mortal world that the core of the great cycle of reincarnation also contained the three lives realm, capable of tracing back the past through the three lifetimes of a reincarnated being, a truly wondrous existence. However, the three lives realm before him was clearly a fake. It was merely an evolution of the ironclad rules above the city. Let me see, what exactly are you? The Lord of Wujian City spoke confidently, flipping the mirror back to Li Heng, hoping to glean his trump card, his origins, and secrets, and thus formulate a countermeasure. Then, with a crack, the three lives mirror instantly became covered in spiderweb-like cracks, and the next moment it shattered, turning into countless fragments that scattered across the sky before finally disappearing into dust. Li Heng raised an eyebrow. This three lives mirror was no good. He didn't expect it to reveal the wonders of origin power. At least it should be able to show the past appearance of Earth. The dead men beside him were dumbfounded. They never expected that their city lord would produce such a supreme artifact as the three lives mirror, which not only couldn't even peek into the foundation of this living person, but even the three lives mirror itself had shattered. Some quick-witted individuals turned and left without hesitation. They were joking. How could they possibly afford to offend someone capable of shattering the three lives mirror? Even watching from the sidelines was out of the question. They had to leave Boundless City as quickly as possible. The little golden dragon perched on Li Heng's shoulder found it laughable. A counterfeit three lives mirror trying to reveal the venerable one's origins? It probably couldn't even handle the genuine three lives mirror. The little golden dragon didn't think it was exaggerating. It vaguely guessed that this venerable one might truly be a forbidden existence, even more ancient than the era of immortals and gods. All the methods it displayed were far too unexpected. With the three lives mirror shattered, the Lord of Boundless City remained silent for a long time. Now he was in a difficult position. He had initially thought it was just a hothead and wanted to suppress it directly, but seeing its arrogant attitude, he assumed it had some powerful backing, though as the Lord of Boundless City, he could still handle it. But now even the three lives mirror was shattered. This wasn't just some powerful backing. It was clearly an immense one. Even to the point that he couldn't cope. Most importantly, he had already made a strong statement and put on a show of force, so there was no way he could back down now. Therefore, he had no choice but to fight. In an instant, he attacked without warning. He knew that this matter had to be resolved quickly, taking down this person so that he couldn't even use his trump cards, thus ensuring everything went smoothly. After taking him down, he would report the matter to Wujian, so that he could rest easy and avoid many risks. However, he was directly blocked by the void barrier in front of Li Heng. Li Heng shook his head. "You're not a good city lord, you lack courage." The Wujian city lord ignored him. He didn't become the city lord by courage. Those who relied on courage were either still fighting on the Emperor's Road or had died so badly that even the Wujian Road couldn't accommodate them. I judge this person in the name of Wujian. Seeing that he suddenly couldn't take down Li Heng instantly, the Wujian city lord didn't delay and directly used his ultimate trump card, summoning the power of Wujian and activating the Wujian judgment. What good is a strong defensive base? This was, after all, the home ground of the boundless path. Li Heng instantly sensed a vast and terrifying rule descending, its level seemingly above the creation realm, seemingly the judgment mentioned by the boundless city lord. He was secretly astonished. The boundless path truly was above the creation realm. Moreover, he could sense that once this terrifying rule descended, even if he exerted all his strength, he wouldn't be able to withstand it. After all, he had just broken through and was only at the 7th or 8th tribulation level. But he remained calm. He didn't even want to use his source power, because it was unnecessary. The boundless city lord was extremely calm. He knew this matter was settled. The boundless judgment had successfully descended, and at this point, no matter what powerful trump cards this person had, they were useless. If he hadn't known that being overconfident could easily lead to disaster, he would have wanted to mock this person. The boundless judgment manifested in a very strange way, actually evolving into a mountain of knives above the boundless city, each knife impaling a corpse. Some corpses were already bones, lifeless. Others still had flesh and blood, constantly wailing. The onlookers, now dead, shuddered at the sight. The more timid ones began to tremble. It was the mountain of knives from the deepest hell. This living person was doomed. This was a punishment more terrifying than death. The mountain of knives pressed down on Li Heng. But the next moment, the mountain of knives stopped. Chapter 430 The Chief Executioner, 33. The Lord of Boundless City frowned. Why had the mountain of blades stopped? He immediately used his status as the Lord of Boundless City to communicate with the mountain of blades, wanting it to fall quickly and not give Li Heng any chance to react. However, the mountain of blades remained motionless. He was startled and a sense of foreboding rose within him. "Is this your trump card?" Li Heng chuckled lightly. "How did you do that?" The Lord of Boundless City was filled with doubt and suspicion. On the path of Boundless, the power of Boundless was supreme, even time and space had to yield to it. But now, the power of Boundless yielded to this person? No, could it be that you also possess the authority of Boundless? The Lord of Boundless City was suddenly startled and blurted out. Guess? Heng smiled slightly. I don't need to guess. There are only a few possibilities that could make the power of the Boundless City yield. Either you possess supreme divine power that can forcibly force the power of the Boundless City to yield, but that's impossible, otherwise I would be dead long ago. Tell me, what kind of authority do you possess, and what position do you hold? After confirming this, the Lord of the Boundless City breathed a sigh of relief. Because among the many Boundless City authorities, the authority he possessed, as the City Lord, was one of the highest ranks. Unless the Boundless City itself intervened, no one could suppress him in this regard. At most, they would be equal. In this way, even if he couldn't use the power of the Boundless City to target this person, he wouldn't be suppressed or targeted by this person. At most, things would return to square one. If this person's trump card was the authority of the Boundless City, then he would be at ease. Because such a trump card was useless to him. Want to continue guessing? Heng still smiled. Are you trying to test me? Or are you pretending to be mysterious to cover up your inner weakness? But let me guess, you're so arrogant, could you be some kind of executioner? Heng shook his head. The Lord of Wujian City frowned. Was he truly wrong, or was this person deliberately creating a diversion? This person was so arrogant and provocative, the most likely candidate was the executioner, his equal in rank. He was the Lord of Wujian City, in charge of the city. The executioner, as the name suggests, was in charge of punishments, responsible for traveling the Wujian Road, monitoring all cities and regions. Anyone found violating the ironclad laws of Wujian would be arrested and thrown into the Wujian Hell to be punished. For example, being sent to a sea of fire to suffer the torment of being burned alive, or rolling on a mountain of knives to suffer the agony of having their heart ripped out by 1,000 cuts. He had just been wondering if this suspected executioner had discovered his dealings with the living on the Imperial Road, hence his sudden intrusion into the city, his killing spree, and his provocation to force his action, all while secretly investigating the matter. If that were the case, he had to be careful. He didn't want to enter the Wujian Hell. That place wasn't for humans, nor for the dead. Moreover, once the executioner discovers his misdeeds and the evidence is irrefutable, his position as City Lord will certainly be in jeopardy, which would be the most fatal blow. After all, he has made countless enemies over the years as City Lord. Just as the two were facing off, and the surrounding dead looked dazed, voices came from the sky, growing closer, as if someone was gradually approaching the city from the air. Third sister, we never expected to find the missing Xiao here. No wonder we couldn't find him for so long. It turns out he was taken to the path of no return by that heavenly abyss demon. Yes, we are truly lucky. Father will be happy now, but now that Xiao is dead, bringing him back to life is a bit troublesome. The voices finally drew closer. Two young and beautiful women, named Xiao San and Xiao Si, descended from the sky. Beside them was Xiao, the waiter, who looked completely bewildered, still not understanding what had happened. The City Lord of No Return was startled as the two women descended. He cursed inwardly. Why did these two living people have to come back now of all times? Weren't they planning to eat at that earth inn? Why so fast? If this guy, who seems to be the executioner, finds out about his connection with these two strangers, it'll be irrefutable evidence, and he's finished. He was frantic, 1,000 thoughts racing through his mind, but he couldn't make a decision. These two strangers were no ordinary people. They were princesses from the primordial divine dynasty on the Imperial Road. If they were just ordinary strangers, he would have killed them long ago to hide the evidence. Oh, Lord of Wujian City, you're here. We were looking for you too. For some reason, the Earth Inn disappeared, so we're returning early. According to the deal, you have to take us back to the Imperial Road, the woman named Xiao Si said with a smile. Heng raised an eyebrow. A little interlude. These two women were actually strangers like him, and seemed to know the Lord of Wujian City. But what was this deal the woman mentioned? The Earth Inn disappeared, didn't that mean the inn under his control? These two women came specifically to find that inn? They were accompanied by the waiter, Xiao. The three women's auras were somewhat similar, suggesting a connection. Combined with their earlier conversation, where they heard each other before seeing each other, Li Heng roughly pieced together the situation and could vaguely sense what was going on. This was truly interesting. The Lord of Wujian City looked serious. He couldn't reveal any weakness in front of this suspected executioner and give him evidence. He could only pretend not to know the two princesses of the divine dynasty. Even so, there was no other way. Being suspected was better than being caught red-handed. However, just as he was about to speak, saying they didn't know each other, the bewildered Xiao Jiayu, seeing Li Heng's figure, immediately brightened up and exclaimed happily, "Manager, so you're here. I thought you were gone." Upon hearing this, both the two women and the Lord of Wujian City were stunned. "Manager? What was going on?" "Xiao Jiayu, what were you saying?" the woman named Xiao Si asked. "Manager, Sister Xiao Si, that person over there is the newly appointed manager of the inn. I never expected to run into him here," Xiao Jiayu said with emotion. He instinctively wanted to run to Li Heng and beg him to let him be a waiter. After all, he didn't quite understand these two inexplicably appearing mistresses, and the fourth sister claimed they were princes or something. A waiter seemed more tangible. However, he ultimately restrained himself. After all, it seemed like a fight was taking place here. "What, you're the manager of the Earth Character Inn?" The woman named Xiao Si's eyes lit up as she looked at Li Heng, somewhat surprised. "Everyone says the food at the Earth Character Inn is the best in the world. We came here specifically but were disappointed to find nothing. We didn't expect to run into you here. Manager, you won't run away now, will you? Don't worry, we have underworld money, you won't be taken advantage of." She patted her breasts and said smugly, "What, you're just the manager of the Earth Character Inn?" In contrast, the Lord of Wujian City reacted very differently, showing astonishment, anger, and surprise, but mostly a sense of relief. For him, this wasn't just one side of the story. The moment Xiao Jiayu uttered those words, he immediately decided to take a gamble, employing a forbidden method he'd acquired from his interaction with the Emperor's child, a method easily detected by the true form of the Boundless Realm. He could indeed detect an aura resembling that of the Boundless Inn's manager. Combined with that statement, it wasn't just a suspicion, but a certainty. He couldn't believe this person could get two Divine Dynasty princesses to cooperate in his act. A mere executioner couldn't do that. He just wanted to burst into laughter. He'd been scaring himself earlier. This person wasn't the executioner, but merely the innkeeper of the Boundless Inn. He could easily suppress and crush such a low-level boundless authority. After the initial surprise, anger surged within him. After all, he, the lord of a city, had been frightened like this by a mere innkeeper. And this little innkeeper had even tried to deceive him with such mystery? It was truly fortunate that this unexpected turn of events occurred. Otherwise, not only would he have lost face, but he would likely have also offended those two Divine Dynasty princesses. How, princesses, hold on. The Wujian Inn is immortal. He's just a mere innkeeper. Killing him won't change anything. I'll eliminate him, seize the Wujian Inn, and then you princesses can enjoy it however you like. The Wujian City Lord immediately became arrogant and sneered. What he feared most was the executioners finding out about his connections with living people. But if it wasn't the executioners, but some nobody, he wasn't afraid at all. With his status, he could completely block all information flow. Even if something unexpected happened, he could easily dismiss any leaked information as rumors and gossip. Even if it reached the executioners' ears, they wouldn't believe it. Executioners also had costs to carry out executions. They wouldn't waste their energy on rumors. This wasn't the first time he'd done something like this. Hearing the Wujian City Lord's words, the two princesses of the Divine Dynasty realized that the atmosphere was a bit off. This Wujian City Lord seemed to be hostile to this Wujian innkeeper. In fact, they were almost about to fight. The two princesses of the Divine Dynasty hesitated, unsure whether to intervene. After all, the Lord of Wujian City was right, the death of a mere innkeeper wouldn't affect Wujian Inn in the slightest. They had only come specifically to enjoy the food and didn't need to get involved. However, he had at least saved Xiao Jiayu, restoring her freedom, and it wouldn't be right not to help. But if they intervened to save the innkeeper, the Lord of Wujian City was not someone to be trifled with. Moreover, the Lord of Wujian City was their trading partner. If he reneged and refused to send them back to the Imperial Road, it would be difficult for the two of them to return. Li Heng, however, smiled despite being seen through. He didn't care. In a sense, he was indeed the innkeeper of Wujian Inn, but he also had other identities. Your attitude has changed so drastically, it seems the identity of the executioner really makes you wary. Let me guess what you were afraid of just now? Is it related to these two women? Li Heng narrowed his eyes and spoke leisurely. The Lord of Wujian City felt a chill in his heart. This man had indeed guessed correctly. Just a mere innkeeper, he can't cause any real trouble. Lord of Wujian City decree, seal off inside and outside. He spoke coldly, and his words immediately became law, isolating the city from the outside world. This caused a stir among the many dead within, and a sense of panic permeated the entire city. Although you are merely the innkeeper of the Wujian Inn, you still possess the authority of Wujian, capable of summoning Wujian. So, I kindly seal this function for you, preventing you from contacting Wujian. You don't need to thank me too much. The tables turned, everything shifted in his favor. The Lord of Wujian laughed loudly, utterly smug. He was truly certain of victory. However, his smugness was accompanied by even greater anger. After all, he had only defeated a mere innkeeper of the Wujian Inn, a minor figure, yet it was worth such a massive mobilization. Did this truly constitute a victory for him? He shook his head inwardly. Forget it, forget it. He had to crush this man first to avoid further complications. However, the next moment, with a ripping sound, the thin membrane separating the city from the outside was slowly torn open, releasing a terrifying aura that seeped into the city, causing the many dead within to tremble. A majestic figure appeared, behind him manifesting a vast world, rife with calamities yet imbued with an aura of eternity, unchanging, undying, and unalterable. Who killed the heavenly abyss demon? Step forward. The voice resounded throughout the entire city. Chapter 431 My flower blooms, and all other flowers wither. The Lord of Wujian City looked grim. Another intruder? Why were unexpected events happening so frequently? Did they not want him to win? He didn't want to deal with this new intruder for the time being, he had to deal with the Wujian innkeeper first. Otherwise, if something unexpected happened, it would be troublesome. He couldn't use the power of Wujian against someone who also possessed Wujian authority. But since he had become the Lord of Wujian City, he was confident that he could completely crush this mere innkeeper. A vast amount of yin energy condensed into a giant hand, within which a world of yin energy evolved, pressing down on Li Heng with the weight of a great world. But suddenly, the figure that had just intruded appeared before everyone. He stretched out a hand and directly crushed this world of yin energy, helping Li Heng block the attack. Then, ignoring everyone, the figure looked directly at Li Heng. So you killed the heavenly abyss demon? The Lord of Wujian City stared at the figure before him, this stranger, his anger reaching its peak. He had ignored this intruder, yet this intruder dared to interfere with his plans? He deserved to die. Who are you, daring to interfere with my affairs? He said grimly. However, the figure remained unmoved. Li Heng looked at the man before him, only slightly less handsome than himself, and raised an eyebrow. What heavenly abyss demon? The former manager of the Wujian Inn. Oh, so you mean that? Then I did kill him. Li Heng nodded, not hiding anything. After you killed him, did you find anything, like bones or weapons? Hearing Li Heng's admission, the man's eyes lit up, and he asked excitedly. I never saw any. The manager vanished into nothingness after death? Li Heng replied calmly. Really never seen him before? Don't worry, I mean you no harm. As long as you provide the relevant information, I will reward you, such as helping you get rid of this dead man before you. The man said, turning his head to look at the Lord of Wujian City. How? The Lord of Wujian City laughed angrily. None of them take him seriously, huh? Even if you, a living being, are a supreme genius on the Emperor's road, so what? Without the authority of Wujian, you are nothing but a tiny ant to me. Lord of Wujian's decree, suppress. He spoke coldly, and the terrifying power of Wujian descended once more, transforming into a mountain of blades, carrying the power to shatter a great world, and suppressing the man. The man looked up at the mountain of blades and smiled lightly. Wujian is indeed powerful, but you are not Wujian. As soon as he finished speaking, the vast great world behind the man also soared up, meeting the mountain of blades. The two collided fiercely, frozen in the void, but neither could overcome the other. The Lord of Wujian City was horrified. How could this be? This person can actually withstand the power of the boundless. Li Heng narrowed his eyes as he watched this scene. He had seen through the truth. In reality, the size of the man's vast world was simply insufficient to withstand the mountain of knives formed by the power of the boundless. What truly resisted the mountain of knives was that seemingly elusive eternal aura. That eternal aura seemed to be a characteristic formed by the final tribulation of the 9 tribulations, heaven and earth great city, or by Jiangdu, which had already passed the final tribulation. In a sense, it also belonged to the power above the creation realm. Only this kind of power could withstand the boundless. Of course, this did not mean that the man's wisp of eternal aura was equal to the power of the boundless. It was just that the one wielding the power of the boundless was not the boundless itself, but this lord of the boundless city. That was why the boundless appeared relatively weak. The 2 princesses of the divine dynasty beside him breathed a sigh of relief upon seeing this. It seemed that their intervention was unnecessary. The man before them was an unparalleled genius who had swept across the imperial road, reached its end, and was preparing to cross the final chasm. Even their divine dynasty had to treat him with respect. Such a figure could easily withstand the lord of Wujian city. Damn it, are you really going to offend Wujian for this man? The lord of Wujian city said angrily. He couldn't understand how so many unexpected events had occurred when he was merely dealing with a mere Wujian manager. Now, a powerful figure capable of rivaling Wujian's strength had stepped forward to obstruct him? So what if I offended him? The man said calmly. He killed a heavenly abyss ancient demon, that's enough for me to lend a hand. Hell, these days, everyone is more arrogant than the last. But have you ever considered why the path of Wujian and the imperial path are 2 sides of the same coin, and why those on the imperial path have a common sense against casually descending to the path of Wujian? The lord of Wujian city sneered. I've already swept through the imperial path, what do I have to fear? The man said with a disdainful smile. The new generation that has forgotten how to save the world is truly arrogant. Lord of the boundless city, manifest a mountain of knives and the sea of fire. The lord of the boundless city waved his sleeve, and the power of the boundless city descended again. A sea of fire appeared in the sky, forming a hell of knives and fire together with a mountain of knives, distorting the void, altering reality, and suppressing the man. He had already seen that this man did not have the authority of the boundless city. That meant that he could use the authority of the boundless city without restraint and summon the power of the boundless city to deal with this person. Anyway, being on the path of the boundless city, the power of the boundless city was endless. It was his home ground. He only needed to block the shopkeeper from summoning the boundless city. Even if the losers who died on the Emperor's Road could survive again, they were still losers. No matter how powerful they were vulnerable. So-called mountain of knives and sea of fire? They are not as good as a calamity. The man sneered, and the eternal world Dharma form he evolved trembled, and endless calamities emerged. Heavenly lightning struck down, earth fires spewed, and floods destroyed the world, seemingly about to destroy this great world at any moment. But the next moment, yet, manipulated by the man's will, it clashed with a hell of knives and fire conjured by the Lord of Boundless City. The two collided, heavenly lightning shattered the wronged souls within, earthly fire melted the mountain of knives, and floods annihilated the boundless sea of fire. Finally, endless calamity directly engulfed the hell of knives and fire. The true form of Boundless is here, and I fear him to some extent. But what are you? Just a slave of Boundless, yet you dare to swagger before me? The man crossed his arms and sneered. The Lord of Boundless City was horrified. How could this be? The hell of knives and fire, evolved from the path of Boundless, symbolized a portion of the ironclad rules of the path of Boundless. Such terrifying methods couldn't even harm this man? Instead, they were devoured and broken by him? It was utterly inconceivable. What realm was this man at? Had he already faintly surpassed the creation realm and was about to reach it? The two princesses of the divine dynasty watching were filled with shock. Advancing to the creation realm required transcending tribulations, hence, there was even a saying that creation was the creation of tribulations. Regardless of the circumstances, tribulations are inevitable for beings at the creation realm. Failure to overcome them can result in either a decline in cultivation or even death. Therefore, many beings choose to gamble on avoiding tribulations. They evade the tribulations, preventing their arrival. If a heavenly tribulation attempts to shatter their created world, they can prevent it from finding it. If demons invade and corrupt it, they can avoid their sight. The key is simply to avoid them. By dodging a certain number of tribulations over a given period, under the influence of the unseen Dao, their cultivation can advance to a higher level without directly confronting the tribulations. However, this method is merely for ordinary people. It lacks courage, and the resulting increase in strength after advancement is minimal. For a long time, Those who advanced using this method were even labeled as having paper-thin creation realms. A better approach is to face the tribulations head-on and endure them. Those who use this method are true geniuses. When heavenly tribulations strike, they are fearless, enduring them with sheer force. When demons attack, they are slaughtered one by one, undaunted by anything. Especially those prodigies who fight on the Emperor's road not only face tribulations head-on, enduring and overcoming them through their own efforts, but also use these tribulations to temper themselves, strengthen their foundations, and forge an unparalleled Deo foundation. However, regardless of the method, the essence is to see tribulations as something opposing themselves and to fight against them. But this prodigy before them is different. He transcends this barrier, not fighting against tribulations, but controlling and mastering them, using them as power. This is what shocked the two princesses of the divine dynasty so much. As princesses of the divine dynasty, their vision was vast, and they had seen countless prodigies. Some prodigies tempered themselves with heavenly tribulations, and some even went directly to the heavenly tribulations to devour the tribulation liquid in the lightning pool. But they had never seen a prodigy who could control heavenly tribulations, yet this man before them had done it. They were amazed. No wonder he was a supreme prodigy who could reach the end of the Emperor's road and was about to cross the final chasm. He was terrifyingly powerful. At the same time, they were also a little jealous of Li Heng. After all, Li Heng had killed this prodigy's enemy, the old demon of Cheyenne, and owed him a great debt of gratitude. Such a favor was irreplaceable, even by the finest treasures. Third sister, why don't we try to win over this shopkeeper to the divine dynasty? He has this prodigy's favor on his side, we can use him to establish a connection. Fourth sister, you've been surprisingly clever this time. We really need to consider this. The two conversed privately, almost forgetting about the waiter, Jiu, standing nearby. Forget it, let's not waste time. Let's kill you first. The man spoke calmly. He had forcibly entered the path of no return through his strength. Lingering too long could easily arouse the path of no return's rejection, or even attract the attention of the path of no return itself. He had to act swiftly and decisively to resolve the important matter. You still want to kill me? Die? The Lord of No Return City was enraged, shifting his hatred from Li Heng to this man. The power of no return descended once more, summoning another hellish realm. Useless struggle. The man sneered. Countless calamities erupted once more from the great world, instantly engulfing and destroying this newly descended hell. The calamities then surged directly towards the Lord of the Boundless City. The Lord's expression changed drastically. Feeling the imminent threat of death, he no longer cared about the loss of his lordship or the punishment he might face. He roared, "May the Boundless descend and suppress this man. Even the Boundless cannot save you. But that's fine. I mainly want to test whether this so-called Boundless is as terrifying as the rumors suggest." The man sneered, showing no fear. Then, a terrifying, invisible will descended, like the heavens above, looking down upon the mortal realm, instantly sending chills down the spines of everyone present. Intruder? You have overstepped your bounds. Die? Endless boundless power surged forth, condensing into a finger that shattered the calamities that were about to engulf the Lord of the Boundless City, and simultaneously detonated the eternal great world the man had conjured. Boom! With a deafening roar as the world shattered, the supreme prodigy's expression changed drastically, his face turning deathly pale, and he finally coughed up blood. The finger had reached him. Even the boundless realm can't kill me, the supreme prodigy roared, hastily erecting various protective measures before him. Worlds evolved, forming layer upon layer of nested world barriers to block the boundless realm. However, the finger moved through them without resistance. The sturdy worlds, radiating eternal fortune, offered no resistance to the finger. With every inch it approached the prodigy, large sections of the world shattered. Finally, the world barriers completely collapsed. This prodigy, who had swept through the imperial path to its end and was about to cross the final chasm, was facing death. The two princesses of the divine dynasties were astonished. How could things have suddenly turned out this way? The Lord of Boundless City, seeing this, laughed wildly, laughed maniacally, laughed hysterically. Now that the true form of Wu Jian has descended, everything he has done will be discovered by Wu Jian, and he certainly cannot escape punishment or even death. But so what? Letting a supreme genius who has already reached the end of the Emperor's road be buried with him is not a bad thing. However, at this moment, A sigh rang out. What a farce. Wu Jian, give me some face. Li Heng appeared in front of this genius at some point, the void before him shimmering, blocking the finger's advance. He said calmly, "If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels." Chapter 432 Imperial Road Passage. Li Heng's actions stunned everyone once again. What had happened this time? The finger vanished, and the descending intent manifested into a human figure, appearing before them. It was Wu Jian. Wu Jian spoke, somewhat surprised and uncertain. "You, weren't you the manager of the Wu Jian Inn? How come you're here?" Li Heng smiled slightly. "Who says the manager of the Wu Jian Inn can't be here?" Wu Jian was silent for a moment, realizing that something unexpected must have happened, and although he sensed that the Wu Jian Inn was on this person's body. "You've violated the rules of Wu Jian," Wu Jian said calmly. "Rules are meant to be broken." Li Heng smiled. "Is this your reason for wanting to save this intruder?" "Outsider," Wu Jian said calmly. In his words, the prodigy was the intruder, and Li Heng was the outsider, not the same person. "It's just a farce, it can't end in tragedy," Li Heng replied indifferently. "I can't see through you now," Wu Jian said calmly. When he first met Li Heng, he could see through Li Heng's strength, the peak of the 7 tribulations heaven and earth. If Li Heng hadn't inexplicably produced ghost money, he wouldn't have even given Li Heng a second glance. But this time, he couldn't see through Li Heng's strength at all. "This isn't surprising," Li Heng replied calmly. He was currently empowered by source energy. If Wu Jian could see through him now, the story would already be over. "Are you really going to protect this intruder?" "In fact, as an outsider, I can tell you a vague truth. Protecting him is meaningless and won't affect anything," Wu Jian said calmly. "What do you mean by that?" Li Heng raised an eyebrow in surprise. He could sense that Wu Jian's words were not simple. They contained a great deal of information, perhaps even the truth about the Emperor's path and the path of no return. "If you plan to stay here forever, I can tell you. I'll give you face this time and let him go, but not a second time. Also, since you've become the manager of the Wu Jian Inn, I advise you to properly fulfill your duties." Wu Jian gave Li Heng a deep look. Then, the next moment, his human form vanished, and his consciousness disappeared. He came fast and left fast. "To stay here forever?" Li Heng pondered Wu Jian's last words, a multitude of thoughts flashing through his mind, trying to grasp the truth hidden within those words. At this moment, everyone was still in shock. They had never imagined that Li Heng possessed the strength to withstand Wu Jian, and that Wu Jian had actually given Li Heng face, leaving after only a few words. This was too unbelievable, almost like a dream. The two princesses of the divine dynasty exchanged glances, their expressions complex. They wanted to befriend this shopkeeper, mainly hoping to use him as a stepping stone to befriend that supreme genius, but now it seemed that the shopkeeper was even stronger than that supreme genius. Even Wu Jian had to give him face. They hadn't even had such thoughts just now. That supreme genius, having narrowly escaped death, had finally recovered from the shock and felt a lingering fear. He had never expected Wu Jian to be so strong, crushing him with overwhelming force. Could Wu Jian truly be above the creation realm? With this in mind, he approached Li Heng, bowed deeply, and said solemnly, "Thank you for saving my life, fellow Taoist. I, Xiao Yongjun, will never forget this debt. May I ask your name?" Li Heng nodded slightly and replied succinctly, "Li Heng." Xiao Yongjun hadn't paid much attention to Li Heng. At most, he felt indebted to Li Heng for killing his enemy, the ancient demon of Xianun, and intended to repay the debt, but he didn't intend to develop a deep relationship with him. A dragon doesn't associate with a snake. After all, he was a supreme genius who had already fought his way to the end of the Emperor's road and was about to cross the final chasm, while Li Heng's strength was at most that of a 7th tribulation heaven and earth being, not worth befriending. The gap was too great, and befriending him would be meaningless. But now it seemed that he had been shallow and misjudged Li Heng. This was far more than just the strength of a 7th tribulation heaven and earth being. He had clearly reached a level above him, or even surpassed it. He even felt that his address of fellow Taoist was somewhat presumptuous and shameful. The little golden dragon beside Li Heng was already numb. Anyway, His Venerable One always manages to cause big, unpredictable things. He increasingly felt that his Venerable One might be an unparalleled taboo that existed long before the era of immortals and gods. Now, his reappearance is solely to resolve this endless calamity. No, this is impossible, it shouldn't be. The Lord of Boundless City roared, unable to accept it. The departure of the Boundless One's true form would spare him punishment. But this didn't make him happy. Because he knew that this meant he had kicked the real iron plate, an iron plate that even the Boundless One's true form had to give way to. But wasn't this kind of being always high and mighty? Why had he suddenly encountered it? What you think shouldn't be is actually the norm, Li Heng said calmly. He estimated the consumption of the source energy enhancement, felt a pang of heartache, and felt he couldn't delay any longer. With a wave of his hand, like an artist erasing a comic book character, he obliterated the Lord of Boundless City. The speed was so fast that no one present could react. The source energy began to surge rapidly again, surpassing the previous consumption. At the same time, 5 more golden source points condensed, bringing the total number of golden source points to 55. The supreme prodigy, Xiao Yuangjun, narrowed his eyes. What kind of technique was that? He hadn't even noticed. Could it be that this person not only surpassed him, but even surpassed the creation realm, completely reaching beyond the creation realm? But that shouldn't be the case. This person didn't possess any aura beyond the creation realm. The 2 Divine Dynasty princesses turned pale upon seeing this. This was it. The Lord of Wujian City held the key to their return to the Imperial Road. Now that the Lord of Wujian City was gone, didn't that mean they couldn't return to the nether world? However, as princesses of the Divine Dynasty, they weren't fragile flowers that couldn't withstand the storms of life. They immediately thought that perhaps the prodigy named Xiao Yuangjun possessed a way to return to the Imperial Road. They hurriedly spoke, explaining their situation to Xiao Yuangjun. They dared not presume to associate with Li Heng now. They hadn't reached their wits' end yet. Xiao Yuangjun shook his head upon hearing this. Princesses, I apologize. I arrived at the path of no return by tearing open the void with my own strength. I don't have a special passage. Therefore, I am not capable of taking you back. However, perhaps this fellow Taoist Li Heng can. Li Heng shook his head with a strange expression. Actually, I also wanted to ask, how do I get to the Emperor Road? Everyone was stunned by this, especially Xiao Yangjun. What was going on? This person didn't even know how to get to the Emperor Road? That shouldn't be the case. Wait, the path of no return just said this person was an outsider. Could it be that this person had only just entered the Emperor Road? At this moment, 2 guards approached them. Xiao Yangjun looked thoughtful. He felt a familiar aura from these 2 guards, as if he had encountered them before. The guards knelt before Li Heng. Your Excellency, we have fulfilled our mission and found the passage back to the Emperor's Road. The 2 exchanged a glance and said in unison. Li Heng's expression was strange. Was this a lucky coincidence? At this moment, Xiao Yangjun's eyes lit up, and he suddenly realized something and spoke up. I know who you 2 are. You're the 2 guys I killed back in Xianin Ancient City, in the middle of the Imperial Road. The 2 guards stared at Xiao Yuangjun in shock. It's you. 2 updates today due to unforeseen circumstances. Chapter 433 The Lighthouse is Light. I thought you 2 were completely destroyed, but I didn't expect you still had the qualifications to come to the path of no return, clinging to life. Xiao Yangjun smiled slightly. The 2 guards sneered in unison. Yes, how can we compare to you, a prodigy? They said sarcastically. I don't care about your grudges. You talk about the Imperial Road Passage. Where's the Imperial Road Passage? Li Heng said calmly. The 2 immediately realized this was not the place to argue and hurriedly said, Your Excellency, please follow me. Fellow Taoist, I won't go. I don't want to stay with 2 defeated opponents. By the way, this is my communication crystal. If you have any important matters in the future, you can come and find me. Xiao Yangjun handed a crystal to Li Heng, then bid farewell to everyone, unleashing his power and tearing open a void rift to enter, seemingly returning by his own strength. Li Heng didn't care. After all, everyone has their own path. He looked at the 2 guards and said calmly, led the way. Soon, the 2 guards led Li Heng and his group into the city lord's mansion. Your Excellency, the Imperial Road Passage is located within the city lord's mansion. The city lord of Wujian specially opened this passage when he made a deal with the living beings of the Imperial Road, said the guard named Laofa. Another guard, Lao Gu made a hand seal, which rippled in the void, and a spatial opening appeared before them, radiating wisps of life, seemingly the passage back to the Imperial Road. It seems you two are quite familiar with this matter, Li Heng said with a knowing smile. The two guards looked embarrassed. Never mind, I won't pursue it further. Two dignified executioners, reduced to guards, Li Heng said, having discerned their true identities, which was why he had left them 100,000 netherworld coins. Finally, without further ado, Li Heng and his group stepped into the spatial passage. The two guards stood frozen, staring blankly at the passage leading to the Imperial Road, hesitant to follow. But in the end, they gave up. Let's go, old Gu, we haven't spent all 100,000 netherworld coins yet. I have a feeling this venerable one might reappear on the path of no return. In a certain area of the middle section of the Imperial Road, amidst towering mountains, the waiter, Xiao Jiu, appeared on the Imperial Road, his figure becoming ethereal and elusive. The two princesses of the Divine Dynasty, seeing the group, quickly explained, Xiao Jiu was a dead man before. Returning to the Imperial Road, where the living reside, causes him to become like this. We must return to the Divine Dynasty as soon as possible to help Xiao Jiu return to life. Senior, would you be so kind as to visit our Divine Dynasty? The two princesses hesitated for a moment before inviting Li Heng. Li Heng nodded. I'm also very curious. Let's go see. This Divine Dynasty seemed to have a great reputation, perhaps he could learn the truth about the Imperial Road and the path of no return from there. However, the next moment, a sudden change occurred. The surrounding void trembled, and a majestic figure appeared in the world. With a roar of dragons and the howl of tigers, riding a divine dragon, the majestic figure descended. The two princesses of the Divine Dynasty were startled and spoke. Father. The figure was none other than Fu Yi, the former ruler of the Divine Dynasty. You two actually dared to enter the path of no return. But as I expected, you actually brought Xiao Jiu out. Fu Yi calmly looked at the two princesses and spoke slowly. He seemed unsurprised by everything before him. Until he saw Li Heng, or rather, the little golden dragon beside him, he was stunned. Fellow Taoist, my name is Fu Yi, and the little golden dragon beside you is a deceased celestial deity. Li Heng did not hide anything. It was obvious that this ruler of the Divine Dynasty, Fu Yi, knew something. I see. So you're dead too. Fu Yi's expression was complex as he reminisced about the past. The little golden dragon was startled upon hearing this, carefully examining the figure before him to trace its aura, and was immediately horrified. So it was you. But what happened? Where is your original body? Fu Yi sighed. It's a long story, I'll explain later. The Imperial path is dangerous, let's return to the Divine Dynasty first. Everyone nodded, having no objections. Then, Fu Yi led the way, and the group arrived at this ancient Divine Dynasty. This dynasty was vast, constructed from countless worlds, a veritable sea of worlds, layer upon layer, almost making Li Heng think he was observing the entire true realm. The little golden dragon looked at the dynasty with a complex expression. This is a fragment of the heavenly court. Upon hearing this, everyone was shocked. Fu Yi sighed. He sent the two princesses of the dynasty and Xiao Jiu back to the palace first, leaving Li Heng and the little golden dragon behind, and then spoke. Yes, a fragment of the heavenly court. In that battle, the heavenly court was shattered. If I hadn't been lucky enough to fall into the path to heaven with this fragment, I would have died long ago. No, actually, I guess I'm dead too? Fu Yi's expression was neither crying nor laughing. The little golden dragon's expression was complex, its golden light dimmed to the extreme. Indeed dead. The number one genius of the true dragon clan lost his physical body, and his true spirit resided in a talisman. What else could he be but dead? He asked sadly. You second-generation brat, you always shatter my illusions. Fu Yi shook his head, having been quite familiar with the little golden dragon before. Back then, I had already left the heavenly court. What exactly happened to the heavenly court? Why did even the heavenly court collapse? That was a supreme divine object created by the combined power of all the immortals and gods, the little golden dragon inquired. How, a supreme divine object? What supreme divine object is there? Even the most eternal, the most indestructible things will eventually be obliterated, submerged by endless calamities. Fu Yi shook his head in disappointment. How could that be? The little golden dragon murmured, stunned and lost. Tell me, You're still causing trouble even after you're dead, even accompanying this fellow Taoist to the path to heaven. What are you trying to do? Fu Yi got back to the point. I plan to go to the central Great World Heavenly Court to find something. Li Heng said slowly. That's impossible. That place is completely destroyed. No living being can enter. Although the numerous calamities destroyed the Heavenly Court back then and didn't stay there, they left behind fragments of their power. With your level, you die as soon as you went in. Fu Yi shook his head and said. Li Heng's eyes lit up. Would that be perfect? Fu Yi? Is this guy seriously ill? He cast a questioning glance at the little golden dragon, hoping it could answer his question. The little golden dragon withdrew its disappointment and smiled. You rascal, don't underestimate the power of the Venerable One. Venerable One? Fu Yi was stunned again. This second generation was arrogant and haughty, not even submitting to him, the number one prodigy, and even wanting to have his lackeys beat him up. Now he's calling someone Venerable One? That's completely absurd. Li Heng spoke calmly. There's no need to worry about that. What I'm worried about is whether I can find what I want over there. What do you want to find? Something that can enhance the lighthouse's glow. Li Heng said slowly. Chapter 434 The Real and the Illusory Path to Emperorship. The lighthouse's glow? Fu Yi asked in surprise. Li Heng nodded and continued, I went to the central Great World to find this item mainly because someone asked me to do this. I was also somewhat interested, so I agreed. Fu Yi's expression was serious. May I ask, fellow Taoist, who is that person? His name is Zhuan Yang, if he's not lying. Li Heng said calmly. Zhuan Yang. Upon hearing this name, both Fu Yi and the little golden dragon were surprised. It seems you two know each other? But that's not surprising, after all, he's also a celestial being from the heavenly court, but in a sense, he's in the same state as you, dead but not completely dead. Li Heng said calmly. Knowing him is an understatement, he's practically a household name. Fu Yi exclaimed. If we're referring to the same person, then he's one of the top geniuses in our celestial court, already halfway to the creation realm. Just one more half step, and he'll reach the divine realm. Fu Yi said solemnly. Li Heng was surprised. So Zhuan Yang had such a glorious history? But he didn't think Zhuan Yang was very strong. It seems Zhuan Yang's condition is truly dire. He's on the verge of death, just as he said, a mere survivor, his strength diminished, even his foundation ruined. I never imagined such a genius would fall to this state. Fu Yi shook his head, sighing deeply. But this is also a good thing. Better to live than die. As long as there's existence, there's hope. Knowing him as I do, the thing he asked you to find might be one of those hopes. Fu Yi continued to speculate. Li Heng nodded. He thinks it's hope, but I won't comment. A lighthouse, a beam of light, what does he want to illuminate? You know, although the true realm is boundless, it's all covered and occupied by calamities. Spreading light out like that is suicide. Fu Yi was puzzled again. Li Heng spoke. While I also think it's suicide, he's not currently in the true realm, but in a vast, boundless void outside of it, and I come from that void. What? Fu Yi was startled. But then a happy smile appeared on his face. That's true. He's a genius ranked high in the heavenly court's hierarchy, so he's certainly qualified to escape the true realm. That's not bad. Li Heng shook his head. If he's not lying, he didn't escape the true realm, he fought his way out. On the contrary, he despises those immortals who fled. That really fits his character. But despise those immortals who fled early? I think it's unnecessary. Everyone has their own path, their own choices. Fu Yi paused, then shook his head. Mentioning the fleeing immortals, Li Heng pondered his question and took out a golden page recording their escape routes. He flicked it in the wind, showing it to Fu Yi. This is what I obtained on my journey, about the retreat routes of those immortals. However, there's a seal on it that's difficult to break. Do you have any good ideas? Fu Yi clearly knew a lot. This aura. Fu Yi was surprised, then shook his head again. This is the seal of our clan's powerful great sage overturning the sea. You should already know this from this dragon. The great sage overturning the sea is a saint above the creation realm, and I cannot break it. Li Heng nodded and put the golden page away. It seems that in the future, he will still have to rely on the omnipotent source power. In that case, we still need to make a trip to the central great world. Li Heng said. You really plan to go to the central great world? Although I do remember that there is a divine object in the heavenly court that can enhance light, it is extremely dangerous there. Fu Yi was surprised again. He thought Li Heng was joking just now. I told you, don't underestimate the Venerable One. The little golden dragon said quietly, while communicating with Fu Yi with its divine sense. You don't need to worry, buddy. When I first met the Venerable One, I was also extremely shocked, but later I got used to it. The Venerable One always brings surprises to others. And let me tell you, I have a guess. Perhaps the Venerable One is an ancient forbidden existence from before the immortal God era, and now he has awakened from his slumber and appeared in the world. The little golden dragon spoke seriously, and Fu Yi listened attentively. Only after that did you realize you couldn't see through Li Heng at all. Although he wondered if the little golden dragon had gone mad. After a moment of contemplation, he spoke again. Each has their own path. If you're determined, I won't stop you, and I don't think I can stop you anyway. However, if you want to go to the central great world, you shouldn't come to the Emperor's Road. Li Heng was surprised. Why do you say that? Because the Emperor's Road is false, the path of no return is real, or rather, the path of no return is the true Emperor's Road, the same path to the cave heaven from before. Fu Yi said slowly. False? What's going on? The little golden dragon was also shocked. You should know, the path to heaven was closed a long time ago. Fu Yi looked at the little golden dragon and said slowly. I know that, but what does that have to do with the fact that the Emperor's Road is false? The little golden dragon asked in confusion. That's why I called you a second-generation rich kid, insensitive to information. Actually, if you had asked your father before, you would have learned that the truth about the closure of the path to heaven wasn't some technological advancement. It was because of an anomaly. Fu Yi said slowly. A mutation? The little golden dragon blinked, somewhat confused. That's right, a mutation. And this mutation is the void. The appearance of the void is the reason why the heavenly court's higher-ups decided to close the path to heaven. The void is a variable that has broken away from many of the heavenly court's immortals and gods. The void is something formed by the sublimation of the obsessions of many geniuses who perished on the Emperor's path and a mysterious power of calamity. It is dangerous, yet extremely precious. As for why it is precious, you should have already figured it out. Despite containing the power of calamity, it can communicate rationally and is very orderly, acting according to rules. It is a brand new kind of being, and also the hope of dawn. After all, the heavenly court's immortals and gods were defeated all the way on the front lines. No one could do anything about the calamity, and no one could understand the calamity. This caused many people to panic, and even felt that the calamity was invincible. Until the appearance of the void. Li Heng nodded. Many immortals and gods saw hope in Wujian to resolve the calamity? That's right, exactly. So they closed the path to heaven and used it as an experimental ground to constantly observe Wujian. Unfortunately, time wasn't on the heavenly court's side, and no one succeeded in uncovering Wujian's secrets until the calamity finally erupted. Fu Yi shook his head, saying with great regret, what does this have to do with the current state of the path to heaven? The little golden dragon spoke up. He was an impatient person and didn't want to know the other details, he only wanted to know the truth. Of course there's a connection. Because no immortals or gods intervened against this boundless one, it grew unchecked, eventually becoming a colossal entity that dominated the entire path to heaven. And just then, the final battle erupted. Countless calamities impacted the central great world, the heavenly court, and even affected the closed path to heaven. Under the power of these calamities, the path to heaven began to crumble. At this moment, the boundless one stood up. He withstood the power of the numerous calamities. However, it was too late, the path to heaven was ultimately broken. But in the end, for reasons unknown, the boundless one used the broken path to heaven as a base to re-evolve into a path to heaven, an imperial path. On this imperial path, the old story repeated itself, with the already deceased prodigies reappearing to vie for supremacy. The boundless one merely cowered within the broken path to heaven, the path of boundless one. Now you understand, right? The beings on the imperial path and the beings on the path of boundless one are all dead, the only difference is who is more severely dead. That's why the so-called resurrection is so easy. The Emperor's path and the path of no return are not two sides of life and death. They are reality and illusion. The Emperor's path is false, the path of no return is real, and only by advancing along the path of no return can one reach the central great world. Fu Yi revealed the ultimate truth. Chapter 435, Re-entering the Abyss. I see. Li Heng exhaled a breath of turbid air, lost in thought. He hadn't seen through the illusion of the Emperor's path, nor the truth that the people on the Emperor's path were also dead, probably because of the obscuring effect of the abyss. And since he hadn't used his source power, he naturally couldn't see clearly. Fellow Taoist doesn't seem surprised. Fu Yi asked in surprise. Li Heng shook his head. I've encountered this situation frequently since I entered the true realm. There are dead people who believe they haven't died, dead people who believe they can be reborn from the dead, and dead people who look like living people. In this vast true realm, I can't find a single truly living person. As he spoke, he sighed. Fu Yi chuckled and sighed. It seems that not only the abyss path, but the true realm outside the abyss path is just as harsh. But that's not surprising. To be able to maintain one's survival and not die in such a harsh true realm, such a person must be a supreme being, a divine being. At this moment, the little golden dragon asked in confusion. Since the beings on the Emperor's path are all dead, then why did you even establish the so-called primordial divine dynasty? Fu Yi curled his lip. You're allowed to enjoy yourself, but I'm not? I'm already dead anyway, so what's wrong with building a divine dynasty? Besides, this divine dynasty is just a derivative product of the script. Script? The little golden dragon asked, puzzled. The people and events on the Emperor's Road are all reenactments of the past. The ending is already predetermined, hence the term script. In the original history, such a divine dynasty already existed, standing in the middle of the Emperor's Road. I'm just going with the flow, Fu Yi explained. Then what's the script this time? Li Heng asked curiously. Every time the path to heaven opens, it's a different script in the present. And this time, the script is naturally about the supreme genius, Xiao Yangjun, crossing the final chasm and falling, leaving behind a legacy, which is then acquired by the ninth prince, who returned from the old divine dynasty, Fu Yi said leisurely. Li Heng's expression was strange. Xiao Yangjun, the ninth prince, little nine? Interesting, he's already got to know all the main characters? However, he didn't take it too seriously. After all, he was just using the path to heaven to reach the central great world, and he couldn't be bothered to participate in this replay of the same old story. Looks like you've won too much, the little golden dragon said sarcastically. After all, the matter was already quite clear. It's all part of the script anyway. What's the point of talking about winning or losing? Besides, because of your appearance, the script has already gone wrong, an accident. For example, right now, Xiao Yangjun failed to return to the Emperor's Road. He's still stuck on the path of no return. Fu Yi curled his lip. Li Heng was somewhat surprised. He thought that with Xiao Yangjun's strength, he could tear through the void and return to the Emperor's Road, but he completely failed? Interesting. After chatting for a while, Li Heng and the little golden dragon bid farewell to Fu Yi, not intending to waste any more time. Seeing that the man and dragon were determined to leave, Fu Yi didn't stop them, but could only warn them to be careful. Watching the departing figures of Li Heng and the little golden dragon, and then carefully sensing his own broken talisman body, Fu Yi sighed. He knew that this time he might truly be saying goodbye to his old friend, little golden dragon, forever. The central great world was incredibly dangerous. Beside Li Heng, little golden dragon grumbled. Your Excellency, did you see that? That guy looks down on people. He's clearly a dead man, but he looks at us like we're dead too. I don't care, but this is clearly disrespectful to your Excellency. Seeing little golden dragon slander, Li Heng smiled lightly. We'll deal with him after this. Little golden dragon was stunned, muttering to himself. Could he really return this time? Back at the Imperial Road passage, Li Heng waved his hand, revealing the previously deeply hidden passage. He then stepped inside, and in the blink of an eye, the world changed, returning him to the path of no return. However, this return was accompanied by a grand spectacle. Rumble. The entire sky and earth began to tremble. Crimson lightning appeared in the vast void, and a terrifying will descended once more, enveloping countless hells and the tormented souls within. You shouldn't have come back. The voice resounded through the void. It was Wu Jian. Why can't I come back? Li Heng asked calmly. As the manager of the Wu Jian Inn, you failed to fulfill your duties and instead led the inn to escape to the Emperor's Road, severely violating the ironclad rules of Wu Jian. I didn't pursue them to the Emperor's Road, which was already a lenient gesture. But now you've returned, are you provoking me? Wu Jian's words echoed, causing the surrounding laws to resonate. Countless chains of divine rules appeared, densely covering Li Heng and the little golden dragon, forming a large net. But is that really the case? Li Heng spread his hands and laughed. Your grand appearance now, is it because I violated the ironclad rules of Wu Jian, and you're here to punish me? Or are you trying to prevent me from using the Wu Jian road to reach the central great world? Upon hearing this, the surroundings instantly fell silent. Wu Jian remained silent for a long time before speaking. Outsider, how do you know this? Of course, it's from Fu Yi, the former ruler of the divine dynasty on the imperial road. The little golden dragon said smugly, shifting the blame. So it was him? One of the ancient immortals. But since you already know this, why do you continue on? You should have already learned about the dangers of the central great world from that ancient immortal. Wu Jian suddenly realized, then asked doubtfully. That's because I have the backing. Li Heng said slowly. How can you prove it? You know, you couldn't even resist the innkeeper identity I gave you before. Entering the central great world with such strength is tantamount to suicide. Wu Jian said slowly, not trusting Li Heng. Oh, is that so? Li Heng smiled strangely. Take another look and see if I'm really the innkeeper of Wu Jian or what? He spread his aura, letting Wu Jian test him, not worried about any surprises. Isn't this still the owner's? Wu Jian wanted to say this after his probe, but suddenly detected something unusual, so he withdrew the cabinet designation and revealed his face in the void, suddenly becoming surprised. He discovered that the Wu Jian no longer belonged solely to him, but also to another being, and that being was none other than Li Heng himself. Imagine the Wu Jian as a company. He used to own 100% of the shares, but now, inexplicably, a new shareholder with 50% ownership had appeared. And upon closer inspection, he discovered that this shareholder had been taking a considerable amount of money from him. Li Heng smiled slightly. He had already extracted a significant amount of source energy and 10 golden source points from the Wu Jian, bringing his total golden source points to 65. However, this was the limit, and Wu Jian was about to discover it. So, Li Heng simply revealed this fact as proof of his strength. How did you do that? After checking again and again, but still unable to find the reason, Wu Jian could only ask in surprise. Chapter 436 Experiment Number 9. How I did it isn't important, what's important is that you didn't notice. Li Heng uttered a seemingly pointless statement, but it was surprisingly effective. Wu Jian fell silent again, the surrounding void rippling slightly, as if pondering his words. Outsider, you really are a variable. Wu Jian sighed, also uttering a seemingly pointless statement. Since you're an outsider, of course you're a variable. Li Heng replied with a smile. Wu Jian's displayed face shook slightly, as if denying it. Then he spoke, it's different. Ordinary outsiders can only be called accidents, not variables. It seems I'm not the only outsider? Li Heng asked. After what you perceive as the true realm's anomaly, many outsiders entered this path to heaven. They either sought refuge or wanted to seize it, their purposes varied. But in the end, they either slunk away or perished here, becoming part of this path to heaven, becoming actors on that so-called Emperor's Road, no longer variables. Wu Jian calmly stated reality. You attacked them? Li Heng asked. I only deal with outsiders who violate the iron law of the boundless realm, Wu Jian replied. And what about those who haven't violated the iron law of the boundless realm? Li Heng asked again. My inaction doesn't mean they were spared. Weakness is the original sin in this stage of the true realm. Besides, you, outsider, have you ever traveled the true realm? Have you seen any real living people besides yourself? Wu Jian posed a question to Li Heng. The little golden dragon beside him shivered instantly. Even someone as simple-minded as him could immediately realize the truth hidden behind those words. This wasn't a question about not having seen them before, but about the true realm being full of dead people. Li Heng nodded, his expression calm. You don't seem surprised. Why is that? You should know that you're the only living person in the true realm. You're walking alone among piles of dead people, in a kingdom of the dead, in a world of the dead, Wu Jian reminded him. Li Heng didn't answer directly, but instead asked a question. Are you dead or alive now? Are you asking me? I've had no concept of life or death since I was born, Wu Jian slowly replied. So, what exactly are you, a calamity or something else? Li Heng raised an eyebrow and asked. I don't know. On the surface, I'm a mixture of the power of calamity and the obsessions of those prodigies on the path before, but in essence. Wu Jian paused mid-sentence. But finally, he spoke again, continuing his story. You, an outsider, are an unexpected variable. I can tell you part of the truth I know, especially about the reason for my birth. However, you must grant me one request. Impossible, Li Heng replied casually. Wu Jian seemed surprised by Li Heng's answer and paused for a moment. But ultimately, he compromised and said, you can do your best to fulfill this request, but I also hope you can do your best. Li Heng nodded, okay. The little golden dragon clicked its tongue in admiration. The Venerable One was indeed the Venerable One, indeed a forbidden existence from before the era of immortals and gods, easily controlling Wu Jian before him. But when exactly did he begin to control him? He pondered. Actually, my birth was a product of artificial experimentation. Wu Jian dropped a bombshell. A deliberate experiment by the heavenly court's immortals? Li Heng asked. However, to Li Heng's surprise, Wu Jian shook his head, indicating no. Although I was born on a path to heaven established by the heavenly court's immortals, it doesn't mean my birth is connected to them. This is a very easily confused point, so I hope you remember it. The little golden dragon beside him was stunned for a moment. He could accept that Wu Jian's birth was an accident, and he could accept that Wu Jian's birth was due to an experiment by a certain immortal, but he couldn't have imagined that Wu Jian's birth originated from a deliberate experiment, and that it didn't belong to the heavenly court's immortals. How could this be? The path to heaven was the territory of the immortals. Which person, which force, dared to cause trouble on the path to heaven? Actually, my birth was the result of a dark hand interfering behind the scenes. Although I don't know if that dark hand is a person, a force, or some natural factor, I'm certain that it's definitely not a heavenly court's immortal. Seeing the little golden dragon's confusion, Wu Jian emphasized again. Anything else? Li Hong didn't dwell on this point, instead demanding more information. Although, as Zhuan Yang said, their immortals and gods dominated an era and were the center of the endless void, the fact that they could be crushed by a mysterious calamity meant that even immortals and gods were not invincible. It wasn't surprising that someone or some force could conduct experiments right under their noses. I suspect that giant hand came from the future, Wu Jian said slowly. From the future? Li Heng was somewhat surprised, emphasizing it again. The future of the true realm? The little golden dragon exclaimed in surprise. Wu Jian shook his head, his words startling. No, it's the future of the endless void. The future of that ancient, flowing, silent river of time and space, standing above all the heavens. Li Heng frowned slightly upon hearing this, remaining silent and lost in thought. The little golden dragon was also stunned, standing frozen in place. But his thoughts drifted back to the past, recalling some information his father had leaked. Some experiments about the river of time and space. Wu Jian continued. When I was born, I had no intelligence. However, as time passed, influenced by the obsessions of those geniuses on the imperial road, I developed intelligence and the desire to trace my origins. But in the end, I only traced it back to a river, and at the river's end, a giant hand slowly withdrawing. I also vaguely heard the words, experimental subject 9 has been born. Wu Jian repeated this, then spoke again. Although I memorized this sentence, I don't understand its meaning. Even after searching throughout the myriad realms, I couldn't understand its meaning in almost any language or script. He finished speaking, his gaze fixed intently on Li Heng. He hoped this variable would surprise him. To be able to surpass his power, self-printing underworld money, and even deceive him right before his eyes. After that, to ignore his rules, disregard the constraints of his position as innkeeper, leave the inn for the imperial road, and even rise from innkeeper to partner shareholder, nominally on equal footing with him. Such a variable was unheard of, unseen before. But even with his current weakness, it was worth his serious attention. Li Heng listened to Wu Jian's retelling. He fell into deep thought again, utterly astonished. It wasn't the information itself that shocked him, but the fact that the sentence had been repeated verbatim in Chinese. Pure, unadulterated Chinese, and in Mandarin at that. Chapter 437 Infinite Void. After a long silence, Li Heng slowly spoke. I do know what this sentence means. Upon hearing this, the little golden dragon, who had also been pondering deeply, was stunned. His Majesty actually knew the meaning of the sentence? Could it be a language from before the era of immortals and gods? Then what exactly is this? Wu Jian was overjoyed upon hearing this, somewhat losing his composure. Experimental Subject 9 has been born. Li Heng answered frankly, not intending to hide anything. Since his transmigration, he had encountered much information about Earth, including seemingly real but unreliable figures and forces. But the only things that could truly directly capture information about Earth were the Savior Jade slip written in simplified Chinese characters, and now, the sentence Wu Jian was speaking. The Savior Jade slip's function was to allow people to comprehend various illogical rules and abilities, very similar to strange rule powers, and Wu Jian before him seemed to be one of those strange ones. Most importantly, he had examined the origins of the Savior Jade slip and discovered it was a product of the so-called Salvation Plan. The essence of the Salvation Plan was to overcome pollution and calamities, and reshape the world with a higher level of power. In summary, Li Heng had reason to suspect that Wu Jian was also a product of the Salvation Plan. Furthermore, Wu Jian's actions perfectly aligned with the plan's goals. For example, after its creation, it didn't cause any trouble, merely occupying the path to heaven. After the calamity erupted, Wu Jian even used its power to protect the path to heaven. Finally, it even re-evolved the Emperor's path. Perhaps this was the goal of reshaping the world? However, if he remembered correctly, based on information revealed in previous appraisals, the Salvation Plan had failed, right? The Salvation Jade slip had thus flowed downstream and arrived in the present world. Li Heng frowned deeply. Connecting the dots, he discovered many suspicious points. For example, the appraisal information stated that the Salvation Jade slip flowed downstream, meaning it should have been in the middle or upper reaches of the river. But the information revealed by Wu Jian indicated that the giant hand, suspected to originate from the organization behind the Salvation Plan, came from the future, which, in the context of the River of Time, is downstream. Downstream flowing downstream, what does that mean? But if the downstream of the river in the identification information doesn't refer to the river of time and space, but rather to the Great Void itself, then why is the giant hand that Wu Jian saw in the future? It doesn't quite match up in terms of time and space. Various thoughts and doubts flashed through his mind. For example, the most obvious one, Wu Jian was lying. But he was too lazy to play mind games with others now, so he had already verified it by expending his source energy. What Wu Jian said was true, every word was real, and he wasn't lying. His thoughts swirled, and Li Heng continued to speculate. Gradually, a general outline began to emerge. However, like the whereabouts of those fleeing immortals and gods, this matter still lacked evidence and a solid foundation, so his ideas remained vague. Wu Jian, are you sure the river you saw was the river of time and space? Li Heng asked, wanting to confirm. He had ruled out the possibility that Wu Jian was lying. But he hadn't ruled out the possibility that Wu Jian was mistaken, so he wanted to confirm again. Wu Jian nodded. It's definitely the river of time, undoubtedly the mother river of the river of time. That feeling of stretching across the countless heavens, with time flowing silently and eternally unchanging, is impossible to mistake. After answering Li Heng, he immediately exclaimed. So I really am a product of human experimentation, and I even have a number. No wonder I've had a vague sense of mission since my birth. So that's it. Number 9, does that mean there are 8 other experimental subjects like me above me? Wu Jian murmured to himself. So how do you feel? Are you resentful? Or do you want to go against that so-called sense of mission? Li Heng asked curiously. In his view, Wu Jian's role was like a robot in a science fiction movie. If it followed the usual formula, the robot would awaken and rebel against human tyranny after discovering the truth. Nothing much? Wu Jian was unexpectedly calm. I've already suspected this. As for resentment, is it disobeying your mission? Don't project the mindset of ordinary beings onto me. To put it simply, if a creature knows it needs water and will die if it doesn't, would it resist drinking water? Wu Jian countered Li Heng. Li Heng nodded, a half-smile on his face, and asked, is it possible that this mindset, this idea of yours, was added to you by someone behind the scenes to prevent you from resisting? Wu Jian slowly replied. What you're saying is possible, very possible, but it's meaningless. It's precisely because I have this mindset that I am who I am. If I changed, I wouldn't be myself. Li Heng nodded. Then I understand. He suddenly realized that although Wu Jian's current role is similar to a robot in a science fiction movie, he is not a robot in himself and won't pursue updates and iterations like a robot, even if the price is a different personality. However, This actually raises an interesting question. What is the essence of awakening? Is it the passing of the old self and the awakening of the new self? Or is it the so-called awakening of the true self? But how is this so-called true self defined? Li Heng pondered deeply for a moment, then smiled wryly, realizing he was just worrying unnecessarily. Thinking about such questions at his level was pointless. Because, in a sense, he was constantly different, constantly living and dying, like yesterday's self and today's self, the self of the previous second and the self of the next. Even if these all possessed a continuity of consciousness, it would still be the same. Like the ship of Theseus. A ship sailing on the sea, rotting piece by piece, then being repaired piece by piece, so from that perspective it was still the same ship. But in the end, it would always become a brand new ship, made from no original materials. You ask me these questions, and I also want to ask you one, outsider, how do you know the meaning of the sentence? Are you a member of that organization? Wu Jian stared intently at Li Heng again. No, Li Heng shook his head. I may have a deep connection with the mastermind behind your birth, but in a sense, I'm not a member of that organization, unless that organization is a country, and it still retains my identity card. Li Heng smiled inwardly, but didn't say those words aloud. I see. I understand now. Wu Jian pondered for a moment before slowly speaking. Your Excellency, I suddenly thought of a conjecture. One that circulated widely during our time as immortals and gods, but lacking evidence. It was merely a topic of casual conversation. Suddenly, the little golden dragon spoke with a serious expression. Go on. Li Heng raised an eyebrow slightly. Your Excellency, you should know that the Great Void is truly infinite, even at a higher level of infinity. Time has no beginning and no end, space is boundless, so theoretically, there should exist civilizations or forces more powerful than us immortals and gods. But we have found none. Even if there were, they would only exist in our conjecture. At least during the era of immortals and gods, when the heavenly court's immortals and gods were all powerful, sitting in the center, their influence radiating throughout the Great Void, there was no force or civilization that could rival us. So, do such forces and civilizations actually exist? If they do, why haven't we seen them? Are they dead, vanished, or gone somewhere else? The little golden dragon slowly posed a question. Chapter 438 The Mystery of Civilization. Did you think I was a forbidden existence from before the era of immortals and gods? Li Heng asked the little golden dragon with a half-smile. The little golden dragon felt a wave of embarrassment. It seemed that the Venerable One had overheard his conversation with Fu Yi. He quickly explained, Your Majesty, it's actually like this. The concept of forbidden existences before the era of immortals and gods is just a long-standing conjecture. Even though it was conjectured in a plausible way back then, there was no evidence to prove it, so it couldn't be used as a real consideration. Then which one do you lean towards? Li Heng pressed with a smile. I lean towards the idea that I truly existed, the little golden dragon said solemnly. But you said there's no evidence, Li Heng said leisurely. Your Excellency, this is actually the crux of the matter. Although I feel that something truly existed before the era of immortals and gods, and intuitively it seems plausible given the nature of the Great Void, I've always struggled to find evidence until now. The fact that a mastermind would appear in the future, conducting experiments on the path to heaven right under our noses, is enough to demonstrate that there is an even vaster unknown beyond our comprehension. Given this, the possibility of something existing before the era of immortals and gods is even greater. The little golden dragon explained calmly. At this moment, Wu Jian suddenly spoke. But what you're saying are all possibilities. Even if the possibility is high, without evidence, it's meaningless. Perhaps the only thing that can corroborate your conjecture is the inexplicable calamities. However, these calamities aren't what you immortals and gods have been searching for, civilizations or forces beyond you, surpassing you. Ignoring the strange conversation between the two, Li Heng slowly fell into deep thought. The Great Void is boundless. There should exist forces or civilizations independent of immortals and gods, and such forces or civilizations certainly exist. He started from this idea. So why didn't the immortals and gods encounter that kind of power or civilization? Could it be that their exploration of the vast void was still too limited to reach other civilizations or powers? Did the immortals and gods believe their influence radiated throughout the vast void, but in reality, they were only confined to a small corner? Li Heng felt this situation was theoretically possible, but intuitively he felt it shouldn't be like this. This mentality was similar to the little golden dragon's belief that it existed before the era of immortals and gods. After all, not all the immortals and gods of the heavenly court were useless. Moreover, he had previously learned from Xuanyang that some of the heavenly court's immortals and gods, unwilling to accept defeat, had ventured deep into the unknown to search for something, hoping to reverse their defeat. This also showed that the heavenly court's immortals and gods had an understanding of the model of the vast void. Xuanyang, this immortal god, even used a river as a metaphor, dividing it into upper, middle, and lower sections. All of this indicated that these heavenly court's immortals and gods were not frogs in a well, arrogant and ignorant, but could truly proclaim in that era that immortals and gods were the center of all worlds. Although this idea was quickly quelled by the calamity, it didn't work. Li Heng changed his approach. What if these civilizations still existed, but instead of being undetectable by the gods and immortals, they had simply hidden themselves? However, this idea raised another question. Why would these civilizations or forces hide? If only a few were hiding, it would make sense, but now all civilizations and forces were hiding, making it impossible for the celestial gods and immortals to find them. This defied common sense. Li Heng believed that on the infinitely vast scale of the Great Void, countless civilizations and forces must have emerged. It was impossible for every civilization or force to be like Voldemort, preferring to hide. There must be forces and civilizations that aspired to eternal prosperity. Therefore, there must be an external factor that forced all forces and civilizations to hide, disappearing without a trace, revealing no information whatsoever. There were many possibilities for this external factor. For example, the Great Void might be a dark forest, or perhaps the various civilizations and forces had been weakened by past conflicts. Even more extreme, some civilizations and forces might have already perished. The possibilities were endless. However, Li Heng didn't want to consider these external factors, because intuitively, logically, and based on the explicit evidence, this external factor pointed to calamity. The calamity forced all civilizations and forces to hide. Those that didn't hide were probably like the unlucky celestial gods and immortals of the heavenly court, either defeated or completely wiped out. So the question arises, since the calamity was so terrifying, that no single civilization or force could withstand it, and even the combined forces of all civilizations and forces couldn't resist it, where could they escape the calamity? Even if the various calamities hadn't erupted, there were no truly living beings left in the true realm. Regarding this, Li Heng began analyzing various events and information, gathering clues, and gradually formed a clear conjecture, which might also be related to the whereabouts of those fleeing celestial gods and immortals. It seemed he would have to ask Xuanyang when he returned. He clearly knew a lot more than this second-generation little golden dragon. Li Heng pondered. "Your Excellency, what have you thought of?" the little golden dragon asked. Li Heng nodded. "I do have a guess, but I lack evidence. I need to go to the central great world to verify it, and also ask someone afterward. He should know part of the truth." "That Xuanyang?" the little golden dragon asked curiously. Li Heng nodded, not hiding anything. "It seems you've already guessed some of the results. Now it's my turn to make my request, isn't it?" Wu Jian asked slowly. "What do you want?" Li Heng asked. He hadn't forgotten that the reason Wu Jian revealed his origin information was actually to get him to do something. After all, they were not related. This could only be considered a transaction. "Don't worry, this transaction won't put you in a difficult position, because my request is consistent with your purpose." "Consistent purpose?" the little golden dragon exclaimed in surprise. Li Heng raised an eyebrow, vaguely guessing. "That's right, it seems you've already thought of it. I want you to take me to the central great world," Wu Jian said slowly. "But aren't you going to suppress the path of Wu Jian?" the little golden dragon asked in surprise. Wu Jian spoke slowly. "Naturally. It won't be my main body going there personally, only a part of me." As soon as he finished speaking, Wu Jian's face rippled slightly, and a figure floated out from within. Upon seeing that person, the little golden dragon shuddered. Lord Xiaoyong. It was none other than the unparalleled genius, Lord Xiaoyong. Li Heng remained calm, showing no surprise. "Lord Xiaoyong greets you both again." Lord Xiaoyong bowed to the two with a complex expression. Wu Jian's face returned to normal, and he spoke. "As you should know, my formation is a mixture of the obsessions of the geniuses who died on the Emperor's path and the power of calamity. The truly dominant force is the obsession of the geniuses after death. Those geniuses died on the Emperor's path in the past. Even if they reached the end of the Emperor's path, they could not cross the final chasm and perished before reaching the central great world heavenly court. Therefore, these obsessions are filled with resentment. These obsessions are also me, so I am also resentful. Among these many obsessions, Lord Xiaoyong's obsession is the most intense, because he is the one closest to the end among the obsessions of the many deceased geniuses. His resentment cannot be eliminated even after I have reenacted this script many times. In that case, let him go, and let me go. Lord Xiaoyong's expression was complex. He looked at the two and nodded. A dream that has lasted for thousands of years has now ended. I entrust it to you too. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 439 The Scenery of the Sea of Light. Fellow Taoist Xiaoyong, what about returning to the Emperor's path? Li Heng said with a half-smile, teasingly. Xiaoyong replied with a complex expression. Back then, when I parted ways with you, I wanted to tear through the void to return to the Emperor's path, but I was stopped by Wu Jian. I thought Wu Jian really wanted to kill me, but he told me the truth instead. I'm already dead. This is just a repetition of the past. What if Wu Jian is lying to you? Li Heng asked curiously. Even if he's lying, he's just deceiving himself. Xiaoyong shook his head, unconcerned. Li Heng nodded, not dwelling on the matter. It seemed that Xiaoyong and Wu Jian had already confirmed their relationship through some method, and Xiaoyong seemed to be of sound mind. He couldn't very well sow discord. Since that's the case, Wu Jian, I agree. Li Heng looked at Wu Jian's face again and said slowly. Since that's the case, I'll send you to the end of the path of Wu Jian. But once you leave the path of Wu Jian, my power can't spread out. Everything will depend on you yourselves. Wu Jian said slowly. What, the path of no return doesn't lead directly to the central great world? Li Heng asked, raising an eyebrow. Xiao Yangjin sneered. Those heavenly court immortals and gods aren't so kind. Whether it's the previous path to heaven or the current path of no return, although they claim to lead directly to the central great world, the final section is broken. That is, the final chasm, the abyss. Speaking of this, Xiao Yangjin's expression revealed obvious resentment. After all, he had died while crossing the final chasm, the abyss. The little golden dragon beside him, somewhat unconvinced, spoke up. What, is it not allowed? This isn't a trap. The immortals and gods didn't force you to step onto the path to heaven. Besides, the path to heaven is a selection mechanism. If you can't even cross the abyss, how can you ascend to heaven in one step and become an immortal? The heavenly court immortals and gods aren't running a charity. Xiao Yangjin glared angrily at the little golden dragon. However, he quickly calmed down and sighed. Indeed, I can't say anything. It's just that I'm unwilling to accept it. Alright, stop arguing, let's go. Li Heng saw that the two were about to start arguing and stop their bickering. As someone who enjoyed this spectacle, he was happy to see it happen, but he still had to get down to business. At this moment, Wu Jian unleashed his power of rules. In the blink of an eye, the surrounding scenery blurred like flowing light. The next moment, they were in a different place. Wu Jian said, "This is the end of the path of no return." Li Heng raised an eyebrow upon hearing this, observed his surroundings, and found that behind him were scenes of hell, mountains of knives and seas of fire, tormented souls, tongues being pulled out of oil cauldrons, and endless wails. This must be the path of no return that Wu Jian governs. If Wu Jian hadn't intervened and led them to the end of the path of no return, they might have passed through these hells. As for ahead, a dirt path meandered into the unknown void, in which dark shadows vaguely appeared, exuding an ominous aura that made people afraid to approach. One should always be wary of others, especially the strangeness of the boundless path. Li Heng used a bit of his source power to probe ahead and discovered that what lay ahead wasn't a trap, but a genuine path to the central great world, the heavenly court. However, the journey was somewhat dangerous. But he also knew that a somewhat dangerous source power meant great danger. "I'll leave you here," Boundless Path said slowly. Li Heng and the others nodded. Boundless Path nodded in response, then vanished into the hellish landscape, disappearing without a trace. "Let's go," Li Heng said, wasting no time and turning to leave. The group continued along the dirt path. During this time, Li Heng chatted with Xiao Yongjun for a few moments. Since the boundless path is the true direct route to the central great world, the heavenly court, where does the so-called emperor road lead? Does it also seem to have a so-called final chasm? Li Heng asked. Xiao Yongjun shook his head. Fellow Taoist, as you know, the emperor's path is evolved from the boundless realm, even the so-called final chasm. So even if you cross the chasm, you're merely returning to the boundless realm and learning the truth. However, I am also part of the boundless realm, and I know a little about his intentions. Re-evolving the emperor's path and restoring the final chasm might also be an attempt to open another path directly to the central great world. This response surprised the little golden dragon beside him. Isn't the boundless path a ready-made path? Even if it's damaged, you can continue up it. That's much simpler than opening a new path and restoring the final chasm, isn't it? Xiao Yangjin shook his head again. The boundless path is indeed ready-made, but it's far too dangerous. Look, there's a calamity ahead. He pointed ahead, and a vast, boundless sea of light appeared. The yellow earthen path disappeared into this sea of light, its condition unknown. The surrounding void was silent and dark. Yet ahead lay a dazzling sea of light. This contrast highlighted the eeriness of the situation. That is indeed dangerous. A calamity blocks our path before we even reach the heavenly abyss. No wonder Wu Jian would rather forge an alternate route than take this one. Li Heng sighed upon seeing this. Fellow Taoist, are you afraid? If so, turn back immediately, Xiao Yongjun said with a slight smile. However, his steps forward did not falter. He had come here to seek death, so he wasn't afraid of utter annihilation. He only needed to see if this fellow Taoist Li Heng, this truly living person, dared to proceed. No, I'm just happy, Li Heng said happily, startling Xiao Yongjun. Before they could react, Li Heng stepped into the sea of light, disappearing from their sight. Xiao Yongjun was dumbfounded. What was going on? He had come to seek death, but this fellow Taoist Li Heng didn't seem to be here to die, did he? Why was he stepping directly into calamity without a word? Had he been bewitched by the calamity? He turned to ask the little golden dragon, but he found it calm and unperturbed. Seeing Xiao Yangjin's somewhat flustered expression, the little golden dragon calmly spoke, "Don't panic, you'll get used to it soon." Within the sea of light, Li Heng felt an endless shimmering light all around him. The intangible light now surged and churned like tangible seawater. Then, the surrounding environment changed drastically. In the blink of an eye, the world transformed. Li Heng found himself amidst towering buildings, cars speeding along the roads, people coming and going. He stood there, somewhat dazed, looking around. It seemed he was back. He sensed himself. He sensed nothing, he had no cultivation. Everything felt like that of an ordinary person. As if his previous experiences were nothing but a dream, and now he had awakened. Except, he could clearly sense the source energy within his body. Li Heng smiled slightly. He wouldn't waste time finding a way to break the deadlock. With a thought, source energy enveloped his fist. Manifesting a great divine power, he unleashed a punch. Immediately, outside the sea of light, Xiao Yangjin and the little golden dragon saw a mushroom cloud rising slowly. Chapter 440 Multi-Alliance. Xiao Yangjin was dumbfounded, unsure how to express himself. That sea of light was a calamity. Wu Jian had investigated this calamity before, using various methods such as power tentacles and clones, but most of them were in vain. Only a few methods returned with feedback, indicating that this sea of light was extremely troublesome. It even had the ability to suppress cultivation. Therefore, after that, Wu Jian never provoked this sea of light again, treating it as if it didn't exist unless one entered the path of Wu Jian. After all, clearing this sea of light would require a great price. He had originally wanted to explain the terror of this sea of light to Li Heng, but before he could speak, Li Heng walked right in and made such a big fuss. The sea of light was churning up and down like an ordinary ocean? Was this really a calamity? Was it really a calamity that could suppress and shield cultivation? He was starting to doubt his own existence. The little golden dragon chuckled when it saw Xiao Yangjin's expression. "You're making a fuss over nothing, aren't you? Don't worry, we should trust His Excellency. He alone can break through this sea of light and suppress this calamity." The little golden dragon's words were brimming with pride. "Are we just going to watch without offering any help?" Xiao Yangjin was taken aback and asked in astonishment. "Help? Help what? Are we just making things worse?" Do you really think your strength is comparable to His Excellency's, enough to enter the Sea of Light and cause such a commotion? The little golden dragon rolled its eyes. In the past, their dragon race had a profession called extras, which was very lucrative. Whenever someone was dueling with another, they would usually hire a large number of extras to boast about their combat power and show off their power. In its opinion, this Xiao Yangjin lacked the awareness of an extra. Xiao Yangjin fell into deep thought. Although he didn't want to admit it, what the dragon said made perfect sense. But could this fellow Taoist Li Heng really suppress the calamity and emerge safely from the Sea of Light, as the dragon said? On this point, Xiao Yangjin was still unsure. He hesitated, wondering whether to use the trump card given to him by Wu Jian. Within the Sea of Light, Li Heng discovered that the world created by this calamity was quite vast. For example, right now, he was standing in space, looking at the planet he had just destroyed. But all around him was a boundless galaxy. He pondered, this calamity was no simple matter. The illusion it created to deceive him was incredibly realistic, even more so than a mere illusion. It was a world forcibly created. If it weren't for his source power, he would probably have already succumbed to it. After all, the real world wouldn't simply dissipate just because you've attained enlightenment and know it's an illusion. Li Heng had reason to suspect that this Sea of Light had definitely tricked many cultivators, even immortals and gods, who considered themselves to have clear Dao hearts and be devoid of emotion and desire. However, Li Heng didn't care about this. In fact, he was happy. Because by destroying this planet, he had actually gained a golden source point and a great deal of source power. This completely compensated for the loss from his punch, and he even gained something. He once again channeled his source power, enveloping his fist, and unleashed a punch. The cosmic vacuum, the four fundamental forces, and all the physical laws shattered under Li Heng's supreme punch. In the blink of an eye, the Milky Way galaxy was destroyed. Yet, this world did not collapse. Li Heng stood atop the Virgo supernova cluster, surrounded by endless galaxies. He smiled. It seemed this calamity truly reflected the vastness of his previous life's universe. The Milky Way galaxy was within the Virgo supernova cluster. Of course, the Virgo supernova cluster was only a part of the Laniakea supercluster, but both were within the observable universe. After a moment's thought, Li Heng unleashed another punch. Using source power to break the deadlock was simple and brutal, but for him, it was a gain. For example, after destroying the Milky Way galaxy, he gained a lot of source power and 5 golden source points. However, this also showed that the universe derived from this light sea calamity had an uneven distribution of source power. The planet Li Heng destroyed earlier was only worth 1 golden source point, clearly indicating a concentrated source power. But the vast Milky Way galaxy only had 5. This indicates that the origin is relatively unconcentrated. With a boost of source power, he unleashed a punch, disregarding the cost. Instantly, the Virgo supercluster where Li Heng stood, and even the Laniakea supercluster, all vanished into nothingness. His own source power surged again, gaining 10 more golden source points. Clearly, even with an unconcentrated origin, as long as it's large enough, one can obtain more golden source points. Li Heng now possesses 81 golden source points. He's almost at 100. However, what's gratifying is that this world hasn't collapsed. Standing above the observable universe, Li Heng looks at the surrounding darkness, feeling both joy and regret. Joy, naturally, because this world still offers opportunities. Regret, because this light sea calamity clearly cannot truly evolve into a vast, potentially infinite, universe. It can only evolve into the observable universe he remembers. Beside him is no longer an endless galaxy, but a dark, unknown expanse. He has already touched the boundary of this world. Living beings, do you intend to commit such an act of annihilation? Just as Li Heng was about to unleash another punch, a face composed of countless galaxies appeared before him, causing the vast universe around him to tremble slightly. Li Heng raised an eyebrow. A calamity that could be communicated with? You are the calamity of the Sea of Light? The face was taken aback upon hearing this. What calamity? I am the manager of this universe. You have already destroyed a vast supercluster of galaxies. Do you intend to destroy this entire universe? He glared at Li Heng with uncontrollable rage. Li Heng was somewhat surprised. This face spoke as if it were the truth. Could it be that the essence of the calamity of the Sea of Light was not to create a world to trap him, but to actually move him to a universe extremely similar to his previous life's Earth? This thought was immediately dismissed. That was impossible. He had already used his source power to probe it. This world, the observable universe, was definitely created by the calamity of the Sea of Light, a seemingly plausible but ultimately flawed creation. He preferred to believe that the scene before him was something the calamity of the Sea of Light had conjured to disturb his mind. After all, it seems his home universe is far too complex. How could this light sea calamity possibly send him back? However, perhaps this universe is merely a reflection? Like a projection or mirror of his home universe? But wouldn't that mean his home universe truly has a so-called universe manager? Heng pondered, somewhat puzzled. He felt such a thing shouldn't exist. After all, his home universe is purely a physical universe. Even a god-level civilization would be more reliable than this universe manager composed of endless star systems. What if I wanted to destroy this universe? Heng replied with a smile after some thought. So you're planning to violate the rules of the Multiverse Alliance? The face narrowed, eyes narrowing, as he spoke darkly. Chapter 441 Heng divides the sea. The Multiverse Alliance? Tell me more. Heng's eyes lit up. Could it really be as he suspected, that this world was a projection of his home, or perhaps a parallel universe, and that the so-called universe administrators, the Multiverse Alliance, truly existed? Wait, you don't know about the Multiverse Alliance? The face suddenly asked in astonishment. What, is there a problem? Heng replied curiously. Of course there's a problem, you have a big problem. The face suddenly sneered. You don't need to fight me now, go explain things to the Alliance's enforcers first. As soon as he finished speaking, a beam of light shot out from the face and disappeared into the darkness, seemingly trying to communicate with something. But the next moment, the face showed astonishment again. What's going on? I can't communicate with the Alliance? He exclaimed in shock. No, not only can't I communicate with the Alliance, I can't even leave this universe. No, it's not that I can't leave, it's that there's nothing outside. How is this possible? The face murmured in disbelief. Heng raised an eyebrow at this and smiled faintly. Perhaps all the space-time outside has been destroyed, leaving only this universe intact? He immediately realized this was the limitation of the light sea cataclysm, only able to evolve one observable universe, and space-time outside of that observable universe naturally did not exist. How is that possible? I clearly came back from outside. Not to mention within the Alliance. The face vehemently denied it, but then realized that Heng seemed to be trying to extract information from him, and immediately swallowed back what he was about to say, then revealed a look of sudden realization. I understand, it must be you, the stowaway, who did this. Trapped like a turtle in a jar, huh? But you're the turtle. He roared, his voice ignoring the vacuum of space, echoing throughout the vast universe, causing many galaxies to collapse and large stars to fall. He was more of a destroyer than a manager. Stowaway? Heng ignored the face's emotions and pondered the word. Was he, who is unaware of the existence of the Multiverse Alliance, a stowaway to the face or the so-called Multiverse Alliance? Since the word smuggling existed, was there some kind of obstacle to prevent smuggling? So where is that obstacle, and what kind of obstacle is it? Is it related to those unseen civilizations or forces? Heng's thoughts raced through his mind, but at this moment, his face had manifested as a colossal giant, carrying the power to shatter endless galaxies, and he swung his fist at him. A simple and brutal punch, Heng muttered, using his source energy to create a void barrier in front of him, forcefully blocking the punch that was capable of shattering galaxies, absorbing its destructive force. I've never been one for fighting, so I'll resolve it. Why do you insist on fighting? I ask you, what exactly is your Multiverse Alliance? Do you even know the word calamity? If you tell me, I can let you leave. Heng smiled slightly. He knew that the giant's agitated expression probably meant Heng, had trapped him. Smuggler, dream on. The giant sneered, throwing another punch. Countless galaxies circled around his fist, each galaxy equivalent to the size of the Milky Way. In the realm of immortals and gods, its strength was equivalent to the ninth tribulation heaven and earth, and it was extremely hostile towards Heng, or rather, towards the so-called smuggler. What else can you do besides this? Heng shook his head, blocking the punch again, helpless. At least use a method specific to the physical universe, like an infinite quantum body, dimensional manipulation, or even just some vague explanation of causality, otherwise, it just feels so incongruous. The giant ignored him and continued punching. Heng sighed, It seemed communication was impossible. Besides, its strength was too great to control. He might as well kill it and exchange it for source energy. He didn't know if it was due to the suppression of the light sea calamity or the characteristics of the physical universe, but his own power hadn't returned. He was entirely relying on source energy. He couldn't drag this out for too long. He immediately threw a punch, clashing with the giant. It was utterly devastating. Even though this towering giant possessed the level of the 9 tribulations heaven and earth, it wasn't qualified to withstand Li Heng's punch, which was enhanced by source energy. It was instantly blasted apart, along with the observable universe. Outside the light sea, Xiao Yangjin stared dumbfounded at the rising mushroom cloud in the sea of light before him, which was becoming increasingly dilapidated and vaguely revealing Li Heng's figure. His aura greatly weakened. He had just been contemplating whether to use his trump card to save this fellow Taoist Li Heng. After all, even if he wasn't at a disadvantage now, being trapped in a calamity was always extremely troublesome and could easily lead to exhaustion. But unexpectedly, before he could even make a decision, the sea of light exploded. The little golden dragon beside him smiled smugly, its little paws on its hips. "Now you know how powerful the Venerable One is, right?" Of course, that's what it said, but the little golden dragon was also amazed in its heart. After all, this was too incredible. To directly confront a calamity was extremely rare, if not impossible, even in the era of immortals and gods. After all, those qualified to directly confront a calamity were all saints. Li Heng returned to the sea of light. Looking at the surrounding sea of light, he could sense that the light had become much thinner and weaker, clearly severely damaged by Li Heng's punch that had shattered the observable universe. And after returning, his cultivation had also returned. Feeling the power within his body, Li Heng smiled slightly. This sea of light was indeed a good place for him. That punch that shattered the observable universe had earned him another 15 golden source points. Now, his total number of golden source points had reached 96. Only 4 golden source points away from the 100 mark. In that case, Li Heng shifted his gaze back to the surrounding sea of light. Although this sea of light was much weaker now, as the saying goes, source power is like water in a sponge. If you're willing to squeeze, there's always some left. This sea of light should be able to gather the remaining 4 source points, right? However, this sea of light was shapeless. Li Heng had just tried, and even using his full strength, he couldn't touch the sea of light in this situation, just like the previous black mist calamity. Unless the sea of light evolved another world to trap him. But after waiting for a long time, the sea of light remained still. It seemed that the sea of light had suffered a great loss at Li Heng's hands and no longer intended to target him. It even wanted to send Li Heng away. Wherever Li Heng went, the sea of light parted ahead, forming a passage that ran through the sea of light and led directly to the other side, like Moses parting the sea in the Bible. Little Golden Dragon and Xiao Yangjin were dumbfounded at this sight. Was this calamity so docile? Actually, Li Heng was somewhat helpless. This sea of light was essentially avoiding him. He appeared to be within the sea of light, but his location was completely unaffected by its light, a country within a country, to put it another way. Since this calamity of the sea of light was so cowardly, he could only resort to the old methods he used to deal with the black mist calamity. Chapter 442 The 100th Golden Source. No matter how strange this calamity of the sea of light was, a simple and direct approach was sufficient. Use source energy to simulate a power capable of countering it, and then obliterate it. He sensed it slightly. The source energy consumption wasn't much, even weaker than the previous black mist calamity. He immediately began using source energy, too lazy to waste time. Source energy, omnipotent, subtly transformed itself, evolving into a profound and mysterious power capable of countering the sea of light, and was amplified upon Li Heng. Instantly, Li Heng could touch this sea of light. If before the sea of light was an outsider, and Li Heng was merely a character within it, now Li Heng's power could transcend both, slapping the outsider in the face. Then, just like when he obliterated a black mist, Li Heng used this power to continuously obliterate the sea of light. The sea of light gradually thinned, the source energy surged, and the golden source points slowly condensed. Outside the sea of light, Xiao Yangjin had a huge question mark. Was this fellow Taoist Li Heng really this heaven-defying? It was one thing to directly confront a calamity, but to actually gain the upper hand, severely damaging the sea of light and forcing it to retreat. Moreover, this sea of light was becoming increasingly thin. At this rate, it might completely obliterate it. Not a deity, yet capable of completely obliterating a calamity? It was simply unbelievable. He suddenly realized why Wu Jian had made a deal with Li Heng. Li Heng strolled through the sea of light, lost in thought. He discovered that even as he continuously obliterated the sea of light, it offered no resistance. Was it powerless to resist, or did it know resistance was futile, or perhaps this wasn't a complete calamity? Thoughts swirled in his mind before settling down. Forget it. To understand the truth, he needed to harvest the source energy first. With his current strength at the creation realm level, he was utterly unqualified to use his own power to glimpse the truth of the calamity. Forget everything else, just consider that physical universe before him. It directly destroyed his cultivation, and all the cultivation methods he had learned were ineffective, as if due to incompatibility at the bottom of the world, his techniques unable to control the four fundamental forces. Without source power, even if he was confident he could deduce a new path, who knows how long that would take. Soon, with Li Heng's obliteration, this originally dense sea of light had become a thin halo. Standing outside, even someone with nearsightedness could see the power within. Xiao Yangjun was stunned for a moment, unsure how to express himself. What happened to being indestructible? Had Wu Jian's initial detection been flawed? Li Heng frowned slightly. He had discovered the reason the sea of light wasn't retaliating. It was fleeing, leaving this space-time, its destination unknown. Otherwise, even if he used full power to obliterate the sea of light, it wouldn't have been reduced to a thin halo so quickly. It took him over half a month to obliterate the black mist, and it wasn't even completely gone. He tried to intercept it, but to no avail. This sea of light possessed an extremely high calamity nature. He was currently only obliterating it with source power, but once it wanted to escape, it would be difficult to stop it, and desperately trying would only lead to financial ruin. This left him speechless. Why are these true realm calamities all so cowardly? They're far weaker than the unknown calamity and the blessing calamity he encountered in the Great Void, yet they're still thinking of running away? Li Heng sighed slightly, but didn't stop them anymore. He could only hope that the terrifying calamities of the Central Great World would be more effective, so he wouldn't have made a wasted trip. The golden source points continued to condense. He had already successfully condensed 3, just one more to gather 100 golden source points, thus opening up the fourth heaven and nurturing Jia Yishan. But at this very moment, the Sea of Light entered its final countdown to disappearance. Based on the condensation speed of the golden source points, Li Heng couldn't possibly condense one more before the Sea of Light vanished. This meant that the golden source points were stuck at 99. Just one more. Li Heng laughed. Just one more, the final push, and he couldn't gather them even if he tried his best? Classic. But he had experienced too many similar situations and was already a bit tired of them. Since he was tired of them, he might as well stop using them. Want to leave? Ask me first. He spoke softly, his inner energy rapidly circulating and burning, manifesting in the darkness, transforming into a profound and mysterious force that hindered the Sea of Light from leaving. The originally thin Sea of Light began to solidify. Outside the Sea of Light, the man and the dragon were somewhat bewildered. What was going on? This calamity in the Sea of Light wanted to escape, and then, just as it was about to succeed, it was pulled back by Li Heng? This. Xiao Yangjun's expression was complicated, unsure how to express himself. This was the first time he had ever known that calamities could run away, and the first time he had ever seen a calamity try to escape. Even powerful beings like Wu Jian avoided these calamities, avoiding conflict, yet this fellow Taoist Li Heng directly confronted the calamity head-on and won decisively at that. The calamity wanted to escape, but was instead pulled back. At this moment, Xiao Yangjun didn't notice that the previously calm little golden dragon also began to gasp in shock. The little golden dragon was now completely confused. Why was its venerable one so strong? Could it be that the forbidden beings from before the immortal god era were really that powerful? He had only been boasting before. Although he hadn't been on the front lines while serving in the heavenly court, he had learned a great deal from many people. For example, the front lines were constantly retreating, and calamities were difficult to handle, even insurmountable. Later, he learned from his father that even some deities were helpless against calamities. In a confrontation, it was often the deities of the heavenly court who retreated and fled. But now, it was the calamities that were fleeing. Although he knew that there were definitely differences in strength between calamities, and that defeating some calamities was theoretically possible, he had never witnessed it before. Until now, the calamity, which had been portrayed as so terrifying, had been defeated by his own venerable one. This shock reverberated in his heart. He was unable to calm down. On Li Heng's side, as he pressed his advantage, the sea of light was pulled back into this space-time, this reality. The condensation speed of the golden source point accelerated, and the sea of light also began to ripple. The sea of light surged and churned, reflecting numerous images in this endless light, as if countless great worlds were rising and falling within it, radiating the pressure of many great worlds, pressing down on Li Heng. At this moment, the sea of light finally erupted in fury. If this calamity of light possessed reason, it would undoubtedly be cursing Li Heng for taking advantage and then acting innocent, for refusing to listen to reason and then being dragged back. Did he really think he couldn't win? Now let's see. Li Heng raised an eyebrow, retracting his assessment that it was inferior to the Black Mist calamity. This calamity of light was also quite formidable. The various great worlds reflected by those light shadows seemed incredibly real, and the combined pressure they exerted was extremely terrifying. Even he felt a strong pressure. Not to mention the suppression of countless worlds, there were still more than 10 worlds at least. However, now, he had successfully condensed his last golden source point. Chapter 443 The Eternal Path. Having gathered 100 golden source points, this sea of light still dares to retaliate? A cold glint flashed in Li Heng's eyes. Since this sea of light wouldn't submit to his exploitation, then it might as well stay. With a thought, he consumed 100 golden source points. He opened the 4th level of the 4 Brahma heavens, the Pingayujayai heaven. Those who ascend to this heaven will enter the profound Dao and attain supreme enlightenment. Instantly, the previously illusory Pingayujayai heaven became real. With its opening complete, Li Heng's strength and status rapidly increased. The 4 Brahma heavens are extremely special. In Taoism, the 4 Brahma heavens surpass all the heavens of the 3 realms, neither born nor dying. No matter how the 3 realms are overthrown and return to chaos, the 4 Brahma heavens remain unchanged, unmoved, and unaltered. Therefore, at this moment, Li Heng's strength had already broken through the 9 tribulations heaven and earth level, even far exceeding it. After all, the great world created through the 9 tribulations is not so eternal, and in essence, it is not as good as Li Heng's 4 Brahma heavens. He narrowed his eyes, not immediately attacking the sea of light. Li Heng felt his current state was peculiar. His strength had reached the 9 tribulations realm of the immortal god system, theoretically placing him beyond creation realm and on the verge of becoming a saint. However, he couldn't see the path ahead, the path to breaking through to the saint realm. He felt like he was neither here nor there, stuck in the middle, far beyond creation realm but seemingly still far from the saint realm. Yet, in this situation, he could sense his potential for infinite progress. For example, his current strength was enough to create a complete universe, equivalent to the 9 tribulations realm of the immortal god system. But this complete universe wasn't his limit. As his strength increased, this universe would continue to grow, perhaps even expanding to encompass the myriad realms and beyond. Yet, he also sensed that if he continued to grow and expand infinitely in this way, he would likely never reach the saint realm, or even if he did, it would be extremely difficult. Li Heng pondered quietly, unsure. Was his current situation due to not strictly adhering to the immortal god system and instead following his own path, or was this awkward situation inevitable upon breaking through to this realm? Of course. He believed that if he used source power and consumed enough golden source points to open up the 3 pure heavens above the 4 Brahma heavens, touching the true meaning of the wondrous existence of nothingness and nature, he could definitely break through to the divine level. But that was only knowing what to do, not why. Although source power is omnipotent, knowing what to do but not why isn't impossible, and there would be no consequences after the breakthrough. He could just get on the train first and pay the ticket later, get the experimental results first and then provide the theory. However, if it was just wishful thinking, without any supporting principles or theoretical models, the source power consumed would be extremely terrifying, something he simply couldn't afford. It was like when he used to visualize the great sun, he still needed a diagram of the great sun for reference. Otherwise, he wouldn't need to cultivate any techniques. He could just use source power to ascend to the heavens in one step. To advance to the divine level, he needed to understand what a divine being was and what principles were used to achieve it. Otherwise, relying solely on the Taoist 36 heavens model and theory in his mind, he simply couldn't significantly reduce the source power consumption. Li Heng was deep in thought. But the pressure of the more than 10 great worlds evolved from the Sea of Light had already descended upon him. He frowned, somewhat impatiently. "Don't disturb my thinking." He then waved his hand, shattering the oppressive force. At that moment, the previously turbulent Sea of Light solidified. Where was the oppressive force? Where was my oppressive force? Where had the oppressive force, painstakingly created by combining more than 10 great worlds, gone? The calamity of the Sea of Light was bewildered. Outside the Sea of Light, a man and a dragon stared in disbelief. That was the oppressive force formed by numerous great worlds. Even though they were outside the Sea of Light, they could feel the extremely terrifying pressure, even making it difficult for them, two outsiders, to breathe. But now, with a wave of his hand, he shattered that oppressive force? Were they dreaming? "Lord Xiaoyang, is that really my venerable one?" the little golden dragon murmured blankly. Although he knew Li Heng was powerful, he couldn't be this powerful, could he? The terrifying oppressive force composed of so many great worlds was far beyond the level of the 9 tribulations of creation realm, right? Moreover, Li Heng's wave of his hand just now even reminded him of the actions of those holy beings in the past. Xiao Yangjin's throat was dry as he spoke. "Fellow Taoist Li, have you truly reached the level of the boundless realm?" After shattering the oppressive aura, Li Heng fell into thought again. He suddenly thought of Su Xian from the Heavenly Sword sect and the illusory eternal Dao fruit he left behind. He had also considered that Su Xian's eternity and the black hole spirit's infinity might be pieces of a puzzle for a certain realm. Now, could this realm be the so-called sacred realm? However, if that were the case, he vaguely felt that besides eternity and infinity, another element should be added to complete the 3 elements. But what was that last hidden element? Eternity, infinity, and the final unknown element might be the complete puzzle for the sacred realm. However, he had no evidence at the moment. Of course, perhaps only one element, reaching its peak and truly possessing it, would be enough to be called the sacred realm. After all, if all 3 elements were gathered, and one could still be utterly routed by the calamity, that would be truly shameful. Unless the calamity was truly as terrifying as unimaginable, even with all 3 elements gathered, one would still be annihilated. This thought resurfaced in Li Heng's mind. Thinking of this, he decided to verify it. He simply ignored the calamity of the Sea of Light and took out the illusory Dao fruit that Su Xian had given him. The light orb of the Dao fruit was still illusory, but he sensed it carefully with his mind. Then, in an instant, he perceived the path ahead. In the previously dark and chaotic unknown, various images suddenly appeared. Among them was an eternal world. Even after all the worlds collapsed and returned to chaos, this world still stood in the chaos, unaffected by any chaos, eternally existing. Within it was an eternal deity. The deity existed since ancient times, surrounded by all the worlds. The flow of time was merely a stream at his feet, unchanging, unmoving, and unaltered no matter how it was washed away. Within it was an eternal law, silently governing the sun and moon, governing heaven and earth, governing all the worlds. Even if all the worlds collapsed and returned to chaos, this law would still exist eternally, even governing chaos itself. Everything exuded eternity, praising eternity. Heaven and earth perish, but I do not, the sun and moon decay, but I am immortal. Because of eternity, I stand above all heavens, unaffected by the erosion of time. Even in death, I can return, existing eternally. Li Heng pondered this, feeling a sense of profound realization. This is the path of eternity, one of the paths to divinity. Chapter 444 The Divine Giant Hand. Such is the eternal path. Then what is the infinite path of the black hole spirit like? Li Heng pondered for a moment, then set it aside. To know what the infinite path is like, he needed to return to the mortal world and inquire of the black hole spirit, who was still illusory and whose existence was now uncertain. His immediate priority was source power, golden source points. He had already sensed the cost of turning this illusory eternal path fruit into reality. Because this illusory eternal path fruit was of extremely high quality, it was highly likely to involve divinity, or even be at the divinity level itself, thus requiring 1,000 golden source points. This was far beyond his current means. Moreover, Li Heng felt that even if he accumulated 1,000 golden source points, he couldn't immediately use this eternal path fruit as a foundation to comprehend eternity and advance to the divinity level. Although, in the current situation, one element was enough to advance to divinity, and the divinities of the heavenly court probably did the same, he always felt that advancing with only one element was somewhat superficial, and that he might be overwhelmed by calamities afterward. Therefore, if possible, he must gather all the necessary elements. Furthermore, because he doesn't strictly follow the immortal and divine system, he must transform it into his own system, integrating it into his own 36 heavens, taking its essence and discarding its dross. After all, having reached this level, one's own path is paramount. He can refer to the paths of his predecessors, but he cannot walk on their paths, otherwise he will be blocked at the end of the road. If he leans towards this heavenly court's immortal and divine system, or towards the three pure ones of Taoism, the Jade Emperor, and many other well-known mythological figures, he might incur great karmic consequences. He doesn't want to be anyone's disciple or grand disciple. After all, he doesn't need to rely on powerful figures now. Thinking about these things, Li Heng felt a headache coming on. 1,000 golden source points, or even more, how long would it take to accumulate that? Moreover, given the current state of the world, it's difficult to delay much longer. He can only hope that the central great world will give him a surprise. At this moment, the light sea calamity finally reacted. In a personified way, it realized that this aggressive being had become stronger. However, the Sea of Light seemed unconvinced, but what did it matter if it became stronger? It would keep going. The Sea of Light surged once more, an extremely terrifying aura brewing within it. Seeing this, Li Heng suppressed his thoughts about the future and raised an eyebrow. What? Still not convinced, he said indifferently, his voice deep and penetrating, echoing within the Sea of Light, and then reaching the little golden dragon and Xiao Yangjin through the barrier of light. The two were astonished, utterly horrified. Was it already threatening the calamity? Terrifying. Seemingly provoked by Li Heng's words, the already undulating Sea of Light surged even more violently, evolving into a colossal tsunami capable of swallowing the heavens and earth, threatening to engulf Li Heng. Although Li Heng was within the Sea of Light, he remained unmoved. This was the transcendent essence of a half-step saint. In fact, because Li Heng did not follow a purely saintly path, having cultivated 36 heavens, his transcendent essence was even stronger than that of an ordinary half-step saint. The place where Li Heng now stood was an indestructible, eternally sacred realm. Even with the immense power of the Sea of Light, it was less than a breeze to him. However, he didn't underestimate this Sea of Light. A calamity truly lived up to its name. In the past, it had caused the celestial gods and immortals of the heavenly court endless headaches, even leading to their eventual defeat. Now, it filled Li Heng with doubt, making him increasingly puzzled about what this so-called calamity was. Even now, he couldn't see through the essence of the Sea of Light. He couldn't see through the essence of this so-called calamity. Even if he used all his power and observed it with his current level, all he could see was an endless Sea of Light. What was the Sea of Light, and what was it composed of? Sorry, he didn't know. Unless he used his source power. But to completely see through the essence of this Sea of Light was equivalent to seeing through the essence of the calamity itself, requiring immeasurable source power, which even he couldn't afford now. This surprised him somewhat. Because with the source power he had accumulated, even a saint above the creation realm could see through some aspects of it, yet he couldn't see through this calamity of light. It was somewhat absurd. Does this mean that the essence of calamity even surpasses that of divinity? Even if one's strength is inferior, one can still avoid much scrutiny through one's own essence? For example, high-dimensional mortals, even if they cannot fly or burrow underground, are still beyond the reach of low-dimensional powerhouses? After all, judging from the scale and power of the Sea of Light, this calamity of light cannot touch the realm of divinity. At most, it is above the 9 tribulations heaven and earth, but only slightly stronger than the 9 tribulations heaven and earth. Li Heng's expression shifted slightly. He discovered that this Sea of Light had undergone a new change. It was no longer the impotent rage that had previously stirred up waves or evolved worlds to send him source power. Instead, the light within the Sea of Light collectively refracted images, and each ray of light refracted the same image, which then continuously refracted and merged, like a mirror reflecting a giant hand that stretched across the void. Even if it was just an image, the power of this giant hand could penetrate the image and enter reality, causing the surrounding void to tremble, as if such a giant hand truly existed, traversing infinite space and time, descending here through the medium of this image. Li Heng sensed it and suddenly understood. This giant hand might truly exist in reality, but now it was merely the Sea of Light forcibly projecting it onto him with its power, attempting to suppress him with this giant hand. It's a saint. Outside the Sea of Light, The little golden dragon stared at this scene, stunned, his words stammering. Because the giant hand created by the Sea of Light was definitely at the saint level. But why? A sense of doubt arose in the little golden dragon's mind. Which saint was this? Why was there only a giant hand lying across the void? Had that saint already perished, leaving only the hand? Doubts kept surfacing in his mind, and the little golden dragon couldn't understand it, but worry appeared in his eyes. This was a saint. Even if it was just a hand, it was a genuine saint level. Could the Venerable really handle this? Seeing this hand is like seeing the abyss. Xiao Yangjin said slowly, extremely shocked. If he had only suspected that Li Heng had reached the abyss level before. Now, in his mind, this giant hand had undoubtedly reached the level of the infinite realm. An interesting method. But ultimately, it's not your own power. Inside the Sea of Light, Li Heng laughed out loud. It was like a pillow being delivered to him just when he was sleepy. He was just worried about running out of golden source points. What a divine being, what a giant beast. It was a complete gift package of source power plus golden source points. And he said to me, "Thank you, Sea of Light." Chapter 445 The Dharma of Heaven and Earth. The giant hand, manipulated by the light sea calamity, instantly attacked Li Heng upon its full manifestation, without hesitation. Even the light sea itself had to yield to this terrifying, divine hand, clearing a path for it, fearing it too would be swept aside. Li Heng remained smiling. Although this giant hand was of divine rank, it was still just a hand, and moreover, it was only a reflection of the light sea calamity, not its true form. Its power was certainly diminished. He took a step forward, causing the surrounding void to tremble violently. A Dharma image slowly emerged behind him, displaying boundless divine power. However, this Dharma image was not the previous Great Sun or Earth Dharma image, but rather a symbol of his fundamental Dao, all-encompassing, capable of being called heaven and earth, capable of being called everything. Within this Dharma image, everything would be revealed: time and space, the five elements, cause and effect, destiny. Even the vast Great Sun and the boundless earth were merely components, elements, not the main body. This Dharma image had already been condensed when he ascended to the Dharma image stage. However, at that time, he had just broken through to the Dharma aspect realm, and his own strength was still relatively weak. The Dharma aspect's intent was extremely high. Like a child trying to drive a large cart, it was quite strenuous. Furthermore, the enemies he encountered were either too strong, requiring the use of source energy, or too weak. A weakened form of the Great Sun or Earth Dharma aspect could easily crush them. Therefore, he never had the opportunity to use this Dharma aspect. But now the time has come. He is now above the 9 tribulations heaven and earth, at the half-step divine level, and his strength has gradually become worthy of the Dharma aspect's intent, making its use less strenuous. Moreover, the divine giant hand reflected in it was a worthy opponent. Not too strong, its essence was extremely high, requiring the use of source power to harm it. Not too weak, as it could be directly crushed by his Great Sun Dharma form and Earth Dharma form. This divine giant hand was endlessly ferocious, its power seemingly capable of sweeping across all the ancient heavens. Wherever it passed, the void shattered into glass fragments, evolving into various great world phantoms and Dao principles. Li Heng looked at this giant hand, remaining calm. Although the Dharma form he had condensed could be called the Dharma form of heaven and earth, it was not simply a world of its own, but rather encompassed everything at the conceptual level, hence the name Dharma form of heaven and earth. It was not a world of its own, but rather heaven and earth encompassing everything. Therefore, at this moment, Li Heng slowly spoke. This giant hand is not bad, containing divine essence and many Dao rules, which can become resources for the advancement and growth of my Dharma form. As soon as he finished speaking, the Dharma image of heaven and earth behind him trembled. Then it slowly disappeared from sight. As the saying goes, the greatest sound is silent, the greatest form is formless. What Li Heng condensed was a Dharma image that encompassed everything, not a Dharma image that formed its own world. Therefore, he would not lower his intentions by evolving heaven and earth to resist the attack of this sacred giant hand. On the contrary, he was embracing the sacred giant hand. It seemed that the Dharma image of heaven and earth behind him disappeared, but in reality, it had quietly unfolded, gradually enveloping this sea of light, enveloping this sacred giant hand, and encompassing it. When something is extremely large and contains everything, it becomes formless. How could this giant hand transcend everything? So soon, The Dharma image of heaven and earth had already encompassed a giant hand. That giant hand, which could only sweep across the ages, froze in place, but continued to tremble, seemingly trying to resist the embrace of Li Heng's Dharma image of heaven and earth, causing the surrounding void to tremble continuously, even to the point of destruction, re-evolving into earth, fire, wind, and water, returning to the chaotic scene. But Li Heng was calm and unconcerned. His heaven and earth Dharma form was not self-contained, but encompassed everything. The methods of evolving earth, fire, wind, and water, destroying the great world, and recreating heaven and earth were useless against him, as everything was contained within it. The giant hand's resistance had already lost in its very conception. It could be said that unless the giant hand could unleash a power that even Li Heng's heaven and earth Dharma form couldn't withstand, whatever he did, manipulating space-time, altering fate, would be futile. Li Heng had reached the pinnacle in terms of conception. The giant hand could only break the deadlock through its own raw power. However, Li Heng wasn't a strictly immortal cultivator. His strength far surpassed that of a typical half-step saint, and some of his power even touched upon the realm of the saint. This giant hand, however, was merely a saint's hand, a reflection of something else, so how could it possibly break through? Outside the Sea of Light, the little golden dragon and Xiao Yuangjun trembled. They weren't trembling with fear, but with excitement. Did you see that? Did you see that? The Venerable One has actually manifested the Dragon God Dharma form behind him, with the phantoms of the 3,000 great worlds surrounding him, and Zuan Heronqi descending, incomparably noble. Your Excellency has a deep connection with the Dragon Clan, the little golden dragon murmured excitedly. No, wait, are you mistaken? That's not some Dragon God Dharma form. This is clearly the Dharma form of the Avasi Hell. The various hellish scenes manifested by fellow Taoist Li are truly wondrous. I even saw saints suffering within them. Incredible. It can actually imprison saints. Xiao Yangjun immediately objected, murmuring in shock. No, this is the Dharma form of the Dragon God, not some hellish Dharma form. My eyes aren't blind. The little golden dragon paused for a moment, then quickly retorted, glaring at Xiao Yuangjun with an unfriendly expression. It's clearly hell. Xiao Yuangjun was also extremely displeased, feeling that the little golden dragon was treating him like a fool. He wasn't blind. The difference between the Dragon God's Dharma form and the Hell Dharma form was vast. One was of the living realm, the other of the celestial realm. But as he was about to continue his rebuttal, he suddenly realized something was amiss and swallowed his words. He looked at the little golden dragon with a strange expression, and the little golden dragon looked back at him with the same strange expression, seemingly having also noticed something amiss. Because they discovered that the Dharma form behind Li Heng had changed again. This is the Yin-Yang Great Mill Dharma form. This is the Five Elements Divine Light Dharma form. This is the Wheel of Reincarnation Dharma form. This is the Net of Destiny Dharma form. Both exclaimed in surprise. They discovered that as their thoughts changed, the Dharma form behind Li Heng also changed. Instantly, a shared guess arose between them. They exchanged a glance, their expressions bitter as they spoke. Your Excellency fellow Taoist Li, your position is too high. We cannot fathom the whole picture. We are merely like blind men touching an elephant, seeing only one aspect of its true Dharma form. A storm raged in the hearts of both the man and the dragon. On Li Heng's side, he had completely suppressed the divine giant hand, constantly eroding it. At the same time, the Dharma form of heaven and earth was analyzing the essence of this divine giant hand and the Dao rules it contained. The essence is actually eternity? Li Heng murmured. He thought about it carefully and didn't find it strange. After all, the heavenly court's immortal and divine system, from the creation level onwards, pursue the continuous perfection and eternal existence of heaven and earth through tribulations, clearly a system that sought the element of eternity. But didn't this indirectly prove that those divine beings of the heavenly court truly obtained Dao through a single element? If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 446 The Great Explosion of the Sea of Light. The calamity of the Sea of Light seemed to have consumed much of its power, reflecting the appearance of the divine giant hand, leaving it weak and powerless to help the giant hand escape. However, this Sea of Light seemed to possess some intelligence, And while Li Heng was dealing with a giant hand, it began to slowly fade and disappear. Li Heng smiled slightly upon seeing this. His heaven and earth Dharma form had already unfolded, encompassing not only the divine giant hand but also the sea of light. It was too late for the sea of light to escape now. Sure enough, the slowly fading sea of light instantly rebounded, becoming solid again, and then, like the divine giant hand, was continuously worn down by Li Heng, becoming listless. Li Heng turned his gaze to the divine giant hand. More information was analyzed from it. Besides knowing that the essence of the divine giant hand was eternity, Li Heng also used causal methods to investigate and figure out where the true divine giant hand was located. It was no longer in the true realm, but at the edge of the great void. The edge known to the heavenly courts immortals and gods was far from here. An image faintly appeared in Li Heng's eyes. In the vast void, a colossal corpse with its right hand severed lay silent, seemingly merged with the void itself, devoid of any life, except for that right hand. Beside the corpse, dark red blood dripped continuously from the severed end, sinking into the void. It had been lying there for an unknown time. It was the very essence of this divine giant hand. The corpse was undoubtedly that of a fallen saint. As for who this saint was, what power they belonged to, why they fell, and what happened to the severed right hand, Li Heng had no idea. After all, the true realm was too far from the edge of the great void, a distance that could hold countless great worlds, so Li Heng didn't intend to delve any further. He could investigate later if he had the chance to go to the edge of the great void. Right now, his priorities were still the source power, the golden source point, and the central great world. Having realized he couldn't obtain more information from this divine giant hand, Li Heng directly increased his efforts, causing the heavenly Dharma form to rapidly erode the giant hand and harvest a source power. So what if the giant hand's essence was eternity? It was merely a reflection, not the true form. Soon, the giant hand was completely obliterated, its emanating Deo rules and eternal essence devoured by Li Heng's heaven and earth Dharma form, advancing another step. Even more surprising to Li Heng was that destroying the giant hand not only granted him immeasurable source power, but also increased his golden source points by 50, a meteoric rise. If more giant hands or calamities like this appeared in the central great world, accumulating 1,000 golden source points wouldn't seem so difficult, perhaps even easy. Overjoyed, Li Heng's gaze locked onto the sea of light. Although the sea of light appeared somewhat weak and dim due to summoning the divine giant hand, Li Heng believed that even a weakened camel is still bigger than a horse, its essence extremely high. If he could completely obliterate this sea of light calamity, he might obtain even more source points than that giant hand. Perfect. Having broken through to the half-step divine level, Li Heng didn't intend to let this sea of light calamity go. He immediately downgraded a portion of the surging source power, transforming it into a force specifically targeting the light sea calamity. Combined with his own half-step divine power and the heavenly Dharma form, he unleashed its full power to obliterate the light sea. This series of actions ignored the inexplicable nature of the calamity. Originally, Li Heng was helpless against the light sea calamity. Even after advancing to the level of a half-step divine being above the creation realm, Li Heng only felt that he could at most defeat and seal the light sea, but completely obliterating it was probably unlikely. After all, the calamity nature of the light sea was not to be underestimated. However, he possessed source power. Having just destroyed the divine giant hand, he had harvested a large wave of source power. The calamity nature of the light sea was nothing in front of source power, easily obliterated. Therefore, Li Heng used his half-step divine power to unleash the heavenly Dharma form, sealing the area and preventing the light sea from leaving, then frantically obliterating it with source power. The light sea had nowhere to escape and could not resist. This situation was utterly unbelievable to the little golden dragon and Xiao Yongjun, who were outside the light sea. Fellow Taoist Li, Your Excellency, are you completely obliterating the calamity? Instantly, the man and the dragon felt as if the world had gone mad. Especially the little golden dragon, although he was only a second-generation immortal, he knew the power of calamities. It could be said that calamities could be sealed, defeated, but absolutely could not be obliterated. This had been personally verified by the heavenly court's deities. But now, was this conclusion about to be overturned? They wanted to doubt, wanted to question, but Li Heng had no reason to lie to them. Moreover, they could clearly feel the calamity of the sea of light disappearing bit by bit. This disappearance wasn't a matter of power erosion or resistance, but a fading of its very essence. Every second, They could clearly sense the Sea of Light's presence growing weaker and weaker. Wujian said that calamities cannot be destroyed, only sealed. He even said that one of his missions might be to seal the calamity and imprison it in the Avasi hell, but now. Xiao Yuangjun murmured to himself, utterly bewildered. If calamities could be obliterated, then what was the meaning of Wujian's birth? Li Heng was unaware of the shock felt by the man and the dragon, but even if he did, he wouldn't bother. As he gradually eroded the Sea of Light, his golden source points were rapidly increasing. He had only eroded half of the Sea of Light, yet he already possessed 50 golden source points. If he completely eroded it, he would definitely gain 100, or even more. It felt like watching his bank account balance steadily increase, with a zero appearing at the end every second. It was incredibly exhilarating. The thousands of golden source points he would accumulate to acquire the 3 essential elements were no longer a dream. However, as time passed, the source power required to erode the Sea of Light began to increase. Previously, eroding 1 unit of the Sea of Light's essence required 0.5 units of source power. But now, eroding 1 unit of the Sea of Light's essence required 0.6 units of source power. If the previous source power consumption was a straight line, now it was a diagonal line. An upward diagonal line. After a moment's thought, Li Heng reached a rough conclusion. He figured he'd probably already worn down the core of this calamity-ridden Sea of Light. The calamity's indestructible essence within the core was likely even stronger, hence the higher consumption. After careful calculation, he became even less concerned. Because by wearing down the calamity essence of the Sea of Light, he could still gain source power. Previously, using 0.5 units of source power to wear down 1 unit of the calamity essence of the Sea of Light yielded 0.8 units of source power, but now it only required 0.6 units. At most, he'd just gain a little less. Even if the source power consumption continued to increase without capping, eventually requiring 1.5 or even 2 units of source power to wear down 1 unit of the Sea of Light's essence, so what? The wear-down process was already more than halfway complete. Li Heng didn't believe the Sea of Light could hold out until then. Moreover, he had already accumulated a large reserve of source power to consume. Ultimately, as Li Heng expected, the Sea of Light was completely under his control. Before the source power could even be depleted, it was already completely worn down, turning into source power and golden source points. Li Heng not only didn't lose out on this wave of source power, but actually made a small profit. Most importantly, he gained a whopping 150 golden source points, which, combined with the 50 given by the Divine Giant Hand earlier, brought his total to over 200. As the Sea of Light dissipated, Li Heng could clearly see the opposite side of the Sea of Light, a vast and boundless abyss, the Heavenly Abyss. On the opposite side of the Heavenly Abyss, a great realm faintly emerged. Chapter 447 Heavenly Abyss builds a divine bridge. The little golden dragon and Xiao Yuangjun stared blankly. No emotion could describe the feelings in their hearts at this moment. The supposedly indestructible calamity had actually been completely obliterated, leaving no trace. It was like suddenly realizing that 1 + 1 no longer equals 2. Their worldview had been shattered. At this moment, Li Heng withdrew his heaven and earth dharma form, and the last trace of the strange phenomenon vanished, leaving only a winding dirt path leading to the abyss. "Let's go," Li Heng's calm words echoed in their ears, and then he stepped onto the dirt path, heading towards the abyss. The two instantly snapped out of their daze and, not daring to delay, quickly followed. "Your Excellency, what is your realm?" Back beside Li Heng, the little golden dragon finally couldn't contain its question, asking with a mixture of excitement and caution. Xiao Yuangjun also looked at it expectantly. "Then what realm do you think I am?" Li Heng smiled slightly as he walked. The little golden dragon paused for a moment, then quickly spoke. "I believe your excellency has already attained eternity, reaching the realm of sainthood, and not just any ordinary sainthood. Otherwise, how could you have completely eradicated that calamity? You must know that in the era of immortals and gods, there has never been a calamity that could be completely erased." Xiao Yuangjun nodded in deep agreement. He wholeheartedly agreed with the little golden dragon's words. After all, Li Heng's current status was so high that they couldn't see the whole picture. Like the blind men and the elephant, what they saw was only a part of this fellow Taoist Li Heng, not the whole. Li Heng chuckled. "So that's what you think?" The two were taken aback, somewhat surprised. "Had they guessed wrong? Not just the realm of sainthood, but even stronger than sainthood? I'm sorry to disappoint you, I am not a sainthood. I am at most above the creation realm, a half-step sainthood. Li Heng said leisurely. What? Only a half-step sainthood? The man and the dragon exclaimed in unison, greatly astonished. This answer surprised them even more than anything far above sainthood. Because they simply couldn't imagine how a mere half-step sainthood could completely erase a calamity. In the past, even a true sainthood couldn't do this. Yes, still too weak, Li Heng sighed wistfully. The man and the dragon were speechless. Too weak? A half-step saint was enough to crush them 1,000 times over. Not to mention, a half-step saint capable of doing what saints couldn't, completely erasing calamities. Was this half-step saint truly what they defined as half-step saint? They were highly skeptical. By the way, you used to be a celestial being in the heavenly court, so let me ask you, how did you advance to sainthood? Li Heng changed his tone, asking curiously. The little golden dragon was completely bewildered. He was just a second-generation being, how could he know the specific details? His brain was empty. However, after carefully racking his brains and pondering for a moment, he respectfully spoke. Reporting to your excellency, I don't know the specific details either, but it's said to be related to the world they created. That great world that supposedly survived the final 9 tribulations, is considered perfect and flawless, and exists eternally in the void, Li Heng said, raising an eyebrow. Yes, it's related to that, the little golden dragon quickly replied. It is said that after passing the final 9 tribulations, the world will become perfect and eternally exist in the void. Advancing to sainthood starts from this point, but I don't know the specifics of how. At this moment, Xiao Yangjin beside him had a complicated expression. He sighed and exhaled a breath of turbid air. Let me answer that. I know. Li Heng nodded and said, then tell me. The essence of the creation realm lies in transcending tribulations. Each time a tribulation is overcome, the world created by oneself will advance further, and then it will nourish oneself until the final 9 tribulations are overcome, achieving eternal worldhood. Xiao Yangjin slowly spoke. But it seems that even the world after the 9 tribulations is not eternal. Li Heng asked. Xiao Yangjin nodded. That's right. Even after passing the final 9 tribulations, the world cannot be completely called eternal. It can only be said that a trace of eternal aura is born, relative to eternity. This kind of eternity may allow the great world to exist eternally in the void, without the limitation of the lifespan of the world. But it cannot withstand the invasion of stronger external forces. So, to break through to sainthood, one must start from this eternal aura? Li Heng raised his eyebrows and said, realizing something. That's right. To break through to the divine realm, one must increase the amount of eternal ki, completely covering the world one has created, reaching the true eternal realm where everything decays but the world remains imperishable, said Xiao Yangjin. Li Heng nodded upon hearing this and continued, is there anything else besides this? Xiao Yangjin asked, somewhat confused. What else could there be besides these? That eternal realm is the divine realm. If there's anything to be careful about, it's that at the final moment, one must sublimate the eternity of heaven and earth into one's own eternity. This is what Wu Jian told me. I didn't know it in my previous life, Xiao Yangjin said with a bitter self-deprecating smile. It was ironic. If he had known the path ahead and the steps to advance to the divine realm in his previous life, why would he have perished at the end of the Emperor Road? I see, Li Heng said thoughtfully. This further confirmed that the heavenly court's immortals and gods attained enlightenment through eternity. However, this conclusion couldn't be viewed absolutely, since it was Wu Jian who told him. Oh well, he'd ask Zuan when he got back. After all, even the little golden dragon, this second-generation immortal, didn't know this information. The thought settled in his mind. Li Heng glared at the little golden dragon with exasperation, grabbed its tail and tossed it into the air. What use is a pet like you, he thought. The little golden dragon, the 3 of them talked all the way until the path ended, revealing an infinitely wide, crisscrossing abyss with no end in sight. The heavenly abyss stretched across the abyss, blocking their way. The abyss was silent, pitch black, and bottomless. Li Heng looked at the abyss, lost in thought. Although he knew that abysses all looked pretty much the same, this one gave him a strange sense of déjà vu, like the true realm rift that had led to the true realm before. At this moment, the little golden dragon looked at the abyss before him and exclaimed in horror, Your Excellency, there is definitely something wrong with this abyss. It is no longer the heavenly abyss that the immortals and gods laid out back then. Something has definitely changed. I can feel a strong sense of foreboding, It seems to have been corrupted by a calamity. Xiao Yangjun remained silent, silently observing everything before him. He himself had perished here in his previous life. Li Heng spoke, his expression calm. No matter, when the road leads to a dead end, a divine bridge will be built. With a wave of his hand, golden light burst forth, slowly descending upon this abyss to connect this shore with the other, forming a golden divine bridge to cross this chasm. But the next moment, an anomaly occurred. Chapter 448. The monster is really trying hard. The golden bridge Li Heng had erected began to tremble. It even seemed to be crumbling. The man and dragon beside him were horrified. Li Heng narrowed his eyes, channeling his power into the bridge once more, calming it and repairing the broken parts. Then, things reached a stalemate. This abyss seemed to possess some inexplicable power, constantly interfering with and damaging the bridge. Even when Li Heng tried to repair it, it would quickly break down again. But playful as it may be, Li Heng wasn't going to waste time. He directly imbued the golden bridge with source power, instantly calming it down and restoring it to its original state, allowing it to continue crossing the abyss, ignoring the inexplicable power emanating from it. Roar. Just as the bridge was about to reach the other side, a roar suddenly erupted from within the abyss, the sound waves spreading out and shaking the void. The man and dragon instinctively covered their ears, finding it deafening. Li Heng remained calm. As he had expected, something did indeed exist within this abyss. Then, a pair of enormous, scarlet eyes appeared in the pitch-black abyss, staring intently beyond it. The eyes darted around, their gaze fixed on Li Heng and the others who were about to build the divine bridge. A terrifying, malevolent aura erupted instantly, accompanied by a fierce wind. Xiao Yangjun and the little golden dragon were immediately terrified. This level of aura absolutely surpassed the creation realm level, at least a half-step saintly level. The heavenly abyss was supposedly just a mechanism for selecting geniuses. How could such a monster appear? Li Heng ignored it, focusing on building the golden light divine bridge to the other side first. With the support of source power, the mysterious power of the heavenly abyss and the monster's roar wouldn't affect the divine bridge. However, it seemed that precisely because of this situation, the monster couldn't sit still. A giant claw, covered in black scales and swirling with boundless malevolent energy within the grooves created by those scales, stretched out from the abyss, attempting to destroy the golden light divine bridge. Li Heng remained calm. Of course, the golden light divine bridge, empowered by source power, is not invincible. It merely possesses immunity to many special attacks through the supreme level of source power, such as the previously inexplicable force. Given enough power, the golden light divine bridge can still be destroyed. However, the standard of power here is still far beyond what this suddenly extended giant claw can achieve. Therefore, no matter how the giant claw tries to destroy it, no matter what kind of evil energy or black mist corrodes it, the golden light divine bridge remains unmoved. The giant claw's attempt to stop the golden light divine bridge's extension is like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. No matter how much power the giant hand unleashes, the golden light divine bridge continues to extend methodically to the other side. This situation silenced the previously astonished little golden dragon and Xiao Yangjun. Their expressions were strange. They had initially thought the monster beneath the abyss was a formidable opponent, but it turned out to be nothing special. Their feelings were complex. It was like a group in a game where a boss suddenly appears, creating an overwhelming sense of pressure. They were all extremely cautious, secretly gathering their strength, feeling they had to fight to the death. The next moment, this boss was completely outmaneuvered by one of their own teammates. Who's the real boss here? They thought to themselves. Watching this giant claw unleash its full power, using every trick in the book, shattering the void, freezing time, evolving the world, yet it still couldn't stop the golden bridge from extending. A sense of desolation washed over them. They felt they were the real boss, while this giant claw, this monster, was merely a tragic hero guarding a lonely city. Roar. Roar roar. Roar roar roar. Endless roars echoed from the abyss, demonstrating that the monster had entered a state of impotent rage. Why? Why couldn't it stop this long, golden thing from extending? Why was this happening? If this monster had intelligence, it probably thought this. At this moment, the golden bridge finally reached the other side, spanning the abyss and connecting this shore with the other. Thus, the Emperor's Road, the road to heaven, and the road to Avicii were now open, reaching the central great world. Li Heng's expression remained calm as he spoke. Let's go. With these words, He stepped onto the golden bridge, ignoring the monster lurking in the dark, unknown abyss below. The man and the dragon were startled. So fast? Were they sure they shouldn't deal with this monster first? What if they reached the bridge halfway and it was suddenly destroyed by the monster, causing them all to fall into the abyss? However, they didn't have time to think about it and quickly followed Li Heng. They weren't fools. Staying with Li Heng was the safest option in this situation. The little golden dragon stepped onto the bridge, feeling little more than marveling at his master's power. As for Xiao Yangjun, he walked step by step across the bridge, gazing down at the abyss below, his expression complex and filled with emotion. Unexpectedly, it was so simple. He shook his head, then nodded, a bitter feeling in his eyes. In his previous life, he had encountered countless tribulations trying to cross this abyss. Heavenly tribulations and lightning tribulations were commonplace, as were attacks from creatures within the abyss, and even inner demon tribulations. He must have died from the tribulation of his inner demons. He thought he had crossed the abyss, become a Buddha, but the next moment he awoke to find himself slowly falling into the abyss, his power and advancement irreversibly disappearing. He would eventually become a skeleton beneath the abyss. But now crossing the abyss has become so easy. Even though this abyss has been polluted by calamities and is certainly more dangerous than before, it's still countless times easier than before. There are no heavenly tribulations or lightning tribulations at all. As for the creatures and monsters beneath the abyss, the giant claw doesn't even have the power to hinder the extension of the golden light divine bridge. Sensing them stepping onto the bridge, the giant claw began to relentlessly pound on it, trying to shatter it and send them plummeting into the abyss, but the bridge remained unmoved, and it felt no ripples. Not even a ripple in its mind. This is enough to show that it ignored even the most dangerous tribulation of inner demons. Is this the golden light divine bridge? Is this fellow Taoist Li's power? Powerful enough to ignore all obstacles. The monster beneath the abyss was truly relentless. Seeing that Li Heng and his companions had reached the middle of the golden light divine bridge, it hastily extended its other giant claw, launching a combined attack. This was truly awe-inspiring. However, the golden light divine bridge remained unmoved. Li Heng's expression remained completely calm. This attack was far too weak against the golden light divine bridge, which was reinforced with source power. It hadn't even reached halfway to the critical point. Did this monster think it could stop others from crossing the abyss? What was the monster below thinking? As the group approached the other side, the monster beneath the abyss grew even more anxious, pounding the golden light divine bridge thousands of times per second like a pile driver, but to no avail, failing to create even the slightest ripple. Just as Li Heng was about to take the final step, an anxious voice came from beneath the abyss. Wait! You can't cross. Chapter 449 The Gatekeeper of Heaven. Li Heng ignored them and took the final step, reaching the other side. He then turned to look at the abyss before him, smiling. See, I've crossed over, haven't I? Upon hearing this, the abyss fell into an inexplicable silence. Sensing something amiss, Xiao Yangjun and the little golden dragon quickened their pace, also taking the final step, leaving the golden light divine bridge and stepping onto the opposite bank, leaving the abyss's boundaries. The next moment, a deafening roar shook the entire abyss, as if some colossal creature was rising, causing the man and dragon to tremble in terror. It wasn't that they were cowardly, but rather that the aura it emitted was too terrifying. Their life instincts couldn't withstand it, and they couldn't help but tremble. Damn it! Why didn't you listen to me? Why didn't you listen to me? Since you won't listen, you won't live. A roar, mixed with words, rang out simultaneously. Endless malevolent energy, killing intent, and black mist erupted from within the abyss, forming a pillar of power that pierced the heavens and earth, penetrating the surrounding void. Within it, a faint phantom image emerged. Following this, an enormous head, covered in dense black scales, each scale seemingly a world unto itself, seemingly capable of occupying the entire universe, tore through the darkness of the abyss and appeared before them. But then a comical scene unfolded. Li Heng's golden light divine bridge, spanning the abyss, blocked the head's path as it ascended. The monster tried to smash its way through the bridge, but the bridge remained unmoved, firmly wedged in place, forcing it to only reveal the upper half of its eyes. Wanting to show its head, yet unable to, it was utterly frustrated. The initially terrified human and dragon found the sight amusing. However, they were also grateful that Li Heng was beside them. If they had faced such a monster alone, they would have been unable to even withstand its aura, losing all power upon first contact. Look at what you're saying. Those two weren't even alive. As for me, your true form can't even get out. Li Heng stood with his hands behind his back, looking at the faint phantom within the pillar of power, speaking leisurely. He had already seen through the connection between the phantom and the head monster, one a physical body, the other a spiritual consciousness. The phantom fell silent. He had originally wanted to make threats, even intending to kill, but now that his physical body couldn't even show itself, making threats would probably only invite ridicule. But who exactly was this person? How could the golden divine bridge he manifested be so sturdy? With such strength, why bother going to your death? The figure abruptly changed the subject, speaking rationally. It seems you know something? Tell me about your origins. Li Heng raised an eyebrow, smiling leisurely. He initially thought this monster was irrational, at most possessing the instinct to prevent anyone from crossing the abyss, until he saw the phantom within the pillar of power. Ignoring the fact that the illusory spirit seemed weak, and even detached from his physical body, it felt as if the physical body could still generate new consciousness even without the illusory spirit. HMPH, why should I tell you my origins? The illusory spirit said disdainfully. Tell a dying fool who dares to walk to the other side? If you don't tell me, I'll kill you, Li Heng said calmly. You dare? The illusory spirit instantly flew into a rage, roaring furiously along with a monster head trapped beneath the golden bridge, the sound waves echoing throughout the surrounding void. Impotent rage is not a good habit. You think I wouldn't dare to kill you? Then I'll kill you. Li Heng formed a sword with his fingers, a terrifying sharpness flowing from his fingertips, seemingly capable of cleaving through time and space with a mere flick, sweeping across eternity, sending shivers down one's spine. The illusory spirit, seeing this, remained unmoved. Come at me if you dare. Your supernatural powers may be able to trap my physical body, preventing it from ascending, but you think you can harm it? You're far from capable. He was extremely confident in his physical body. It was so powerful that even his consciousness had been repelled. He had previously cultivated the Dao of the soul, yet it still couldn't match his current physical body. One could imagine how powerful it was. Li Heng remained calm, offering no reply, but instead slashed down with a finger. A sharp, flowing light instantly poured forth, tearing through space and time, reversing the flow of years, illuminating the area around the utterly dark abyss in an instant, making it as bright as day. The phantom was terrified, desperately trying to dodge. This sharp light wasn't aimed at his physical body, but at his consciousness. Damn it, you have no martial ethics, the phantom roared as it dodged. He had lived and died for so long, and this was the first time he had encountered someone so lacking in martial ethics. Shouldn't they have attacked his physical body first? It's like beast tamers fighting. You have to fight the beasts first, not the beast tamers, otherwise what's the point of beast taming? The sharp edge arrived instantly, locking onto the causal connection. No matter how the phantom dodged, the sharp edge relentlessly followed. Even though it used the pillar of its bursting aura to defend itself, facing this terrifying sharpness was like a hot knife through a candle, easily sliced through and striking the phantom. The phantom instantly exploded. At that very moment, the head monster trapped by the golden light seeking the divine bridge also fell into an even more severe state of rage. It even seemed to have lost its mind due to the explosion of the phantom, extending its two massive claws, also covered in black scales, to strike Li Heng. Kill, kill, kill. Those who attempt to break through will die. At this moment, it was the monster that spoke, constantly muttering low growls, sometimes clear, sometimes indistinct, sometimes fluent, sometimes halting. But its words were filled with killing intent towards Li Heng and his companions. Li Heng nodded. It was indeed as he had expected. Although the phantom and the monster shared a consciousness and a physical body, identity was ultimately just identity. The connection was now minimal and shallow. The phantom's consciousness had exploded, yet the monster could still function normally. In fact, because of the phantom's explosion, the monster lost its rational control and became even more frenzied. But those murmured words said they were challengers? Could this monster have been a gatekeeper before? Guarding the heavenly court, the gateway to the central great world? He pondered briefly, then again formed a sword shape with his fingers, a sharp edge flowing from his fingertips. He didn't even glance at the two black monster claws that were slapping towards him, simply swinging them out casually. The sharp edge poured out, as easily as a knife cutting through tofu. The two giant claws were instantly sliced off. The monster roared in pain, its two severed claws falling into the abyss, black blood continuously flowing from the cut surfaces of its arms, radiating an extremely ominous aura. Li Heng didn't care, turning his head to look at the little golden dragon, and asked, "Did your heavenly court's immortals and gods have gatekeepers before?" Chapter 450 Annihilation with a single finger. A gatekeeper? The little golden dragon pondered. Your Majesty, if we're talking about a gatekeeper specifically, then there's definitely no one like that. But if we're talking about guarding some gates of this central great world, then there must be a few immortals or gods involved in these duties. Your Majesty, are you suggesting that this monster used to be a gatekeeper in the heavenly court? The little golden dragon asked in surprise. You don't think so? Li Heng raised an eyebrow and said. The little golden dragon pondered for a moment and then spoke. It's not a matter of whether it looks like one or not, it's just that I really can't think of any immortal or god who would be mutated into such a monster, and its aura is also somewhat unfamiliar. The two continued their conversation, completely ignoring the monster. The monster's two hands had been severed, and it roared in pain. Now, it felt even more humiliated by being ignored, feeling that these small creatures didn't take it seriously at all, which made it even more furious. Immediately, the flesh on its body began to writhe and move around, finally gathering at the severed ends of its arms, as if trying to regenerate two giant claws. Do you know all the immortals and gods? Xiao Yangjin suddenly added from the side. The little golden dragon shook its head. It's different. Heavenly gods and immortals all possess their own unique auras. I can distinguish whether someone is one of us by that aura, but this monster doesn't have that aura. At this moment, the two giant claws reformed. Enraged, they struck at Li Heng and his companions again. Wherever the claws passed, the void shattered like a mirror, stirring up violent spatial turbulence. This strike was even more powerful than before. But Li Heng remained unconcerned. He formed a sword with his fingers, and a point of light poured out, severing the two giant claws once more. Black blood dripped and sank into the abyss. Another series of painful roars rang out. Li Heng remained deaf to them, speaking calmly, auras can change, nothing is eternal. Of course, what the little golden dragon said wasn't impossible, but one needs to consider all aspects of a problem. Your Excellency is right, very reasonable. The little golden dragon flicked its tail, quickly agreeing and flattering him. Xiao Yangjin, standing beside him, felt speechless. She had just been refuting him. It's said that dragons are born with pride and an indomitable spirit. But now, he saw neither pride nor any resistance. His beautiful impression of the dragon race was shattered. Li Heng ignored the flattering little golden dragon and looked at the monster. He noticed that the monster's strength was gradually increasing. Or rather, the angrier it was, the stronger it became. It was like a giant whose physiology and psychology were both green. At this moment, the monster reformed its hands, its scarlet eyes reflecting substantial rage, determined to crush Li Heng, this despicable little creature. Truly tenacious. I'll cut you 3 times, and you won't live. Li Heng spoke indifferently, his fingers forming a sword. A flash of light, and the two giant claws that had reformed instantly severed, scattering black blood like a waterfall. But it didn't stop there. After severing the two giant claws, the light continued to fly forward, its target aimed directly at the monster's head, its very essence. The monster instinctively sensed the life or death crisis and tried to dive downwards. But the light was too fast, tearing through time and reversing the flow of years. It couldn't be described by a mere instant, the result was already locked, already struck. At this moment, the result was revealed. The light struck the monster's head directly, easily piercing through its incredibly sturdy black scales, like a knife cutting through tofu, splitting the entire head in two and shattering its deepest source. Instantly, source power arrived in his account. Li Heng directly gained 50 golden source points. Li Heng sensed it and was somewhat surprised. He knew that even the divine giant hand was only worth 50 golden source points. How could this monster, which he had so easily crushed, be worth 50 golden source points? Was it because the divine giant hand was only a hand, not the entirety of the body, and was merely a reflection, thus greatly reducing the golden source points gained? Li Heng could only come to this explanation after much thought. As for the monster's special characteristics, he hadn't seen them. Aside from its slightly stronger physical body, of course, this was only in Li Heng's eyes. For someone else, even another half-step saint, it would be billions stronger. Little Golden Dragon and Xiao Yangjun were somewhat stunned. How so? They hadn't expected Li Heng to act so quickly. This was a monster, and so fragile, it died instantly. They had hoped to gain some confidence from this monster. While they sighed inwardly, Li Heng remained calm, still looking at Yuan Yuan and speaking. Have you seen enough? If you have, come out. It seems your connection with that physical monster isn't very strong. How did you know I wasn't dead? Ripples spread across the void above Yuan Yuan, and a faint, ethereal figure reappeared. He looked at Li Heng in shock, exclaiming in disbelief. It was unbelievable. He had thought his physical body was invincible. He hadn't expected someone to be even more powerful than that physical body. He had just boasted that Li Heng couldn't possibly harm his physical body and even accused him of lacking martial ethics. But now it seemed he was the one who had lost face. This person had long since transcended the boundaries of martial ethics. Whether it was cutting his physical body or his consciousness, the result was the same. As easy as chopping vegetables, no choice was needed. I know you're not dead, so I know you're not dead. Li Heng spoke leisurely, uttering a meaningless statement. He had to slash the monster 3 times to kill it, so this phantom, as the monster's consciousness, clearly possessed its own abilities. How could it possibly kill it completely with just 1 strike? Furthermore, he hadn't sensed any source energy arriving. After being blasted apart by him, this phantom feigned death, secretly coalescing and hiding in the surrounding void corners. Did they really think he hadn't seen it? Did they really think everyone else was a fool? The phantom's face was grim. It felt completely manipulated by this being. So what if you know I'm not dead? You can't kill me. As long as the heavenly abyss exists, I will not perish. After thinking for a moment, it felt it had been too humiliating before, so it simply retorted with another threat. This being couldn't possibly destroy even the heavenly abyss, could it? That was impossible. It thought to itself. Then you may try, I'll strike you again. Li Heng spoke leisurely, his fingers beginning to form a sword. At this moment, Li Heng's aura surged to its peak, his power locking onto the illusory figure. The illusory figure sensed its predicament, feeling as if it had nowhere to escape, facing this attack whether it ascended to heaven or descended to earth. It began to panic. What if this being could truly disregard the connection between itself and the heavenly abyss? After all, even its indestructible physical body had been destroyed. Thinking frantically, it spoke loudly from its heart, wait, let's talk this out, Don't you want to know what happened in the Central Great World? End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all, see you in the next video.